Chapter 700. I mustn't let him come over. Su Yu's eyes were filled with sharpness as he waved his hand. The dry cloud 5 elemental formation appeared and turned into a 4-colored light screen to seal the crack. However, just as it was about to seal the crack, the light screen was instantly shattered. The 4 pearls were scattered everywhere and bounced back at a speed 10 times faster than when they had left. Bang! Bang! 4 consecutive loud noises echoed as 4 holes appeared where Su Yu had been standing. As he supported Elder Gyo, Su Yu's eyes became serious. When he looked closely, he found that the 4 pearls had been damaged to varying degrees. Just a glance from him had almost destroyed 4 semi-manufactured spiritual artifacts. The Su Yu who defeated the Divine Master's clone? He would be considered above average in the Central Prefecture, but it's a pity that he is in a barren land and is destined to be ordinary for the rest of his life. Su Yu felt as if a pair of eyes had penetrated through millions of spaces and landed on his body. At that moment, Su Yu felt as if his soul was about to be destroyed. This was definitely not a realm that he could deal with. Don't waste your efforts. He has already entered the space channel, and no one can stop him unless he has the power to suppress an all-creation realm expert. He will surely arrive at the dragon abyss of the 9 underworlds in less than half an hour. It's too late now. I didn't expect that the Central Prefecture's king would send the Blood Emperor here. It seems like he is willing to sacrifice everything in order to get rid of any future troubles and fight for the Jojo Emperor's throne peacefully. The price to send an all-creation realm expert here is to destroy a fairy artifact and use its power to teleport him here. In order to teleport the Blood Emperor, he had to destroy a fairy artifact. A fairy artifact was a holy artifact that only all-creation old monsters could use. Even in the Jojo world, it was extremely rare. It was as magnificent as the mysterious Heavenly Divine Pavilion, and it was also a fairy artifact. The Central Prefecture's king had put in a lot of effort to kill the Jojo Emperor. Run for as long as you can. Since he has appeared in Zhenlong, the continent's destruction is imminent. In the past, he destroyed the Zhenlong continent with just a palm print. It was the Jojo Emperor who used his flesh and blood to revive the continent. Now there is no Jojo Emperor who can save the continent. Elder Gyo laughed bitterly. Su Yu was shocked when he heard this. The true appearance of the Zhenlong continent was a giant palm print, which had been created by the first bright light guard, the Blood Emperor. After 100 years, the Blood Emperor's power was far greater than it had been in the past. Su Yu did not doubt the mighty power of such an unparalleled Almighty. Escape? Su Yu let out a bitter smile. He might be able to escape for now, but could he escape the day Blood Emperor arrived? Even if he managed to escape, what about Xiener, Xia Jingyu, the Duke of Xianyu, Zi Donglai and his daughter, Lin Yunhe, Gang Dalai and Elder Gyo? Watch them turn into ashes, become remnant souls, and become the dust of memories? Then, what was he fighting for until now? Scholarly honors? Li Lu? None of them. All he wanted was to return the favor and return the favor. All he wanted was to protect the important people in his life and live an ordinary but magnificent life. Now, because of the arrival of an invincible expert, everything was going to be turned into ashes? Unwillingness, self-blame, and defiance were like a tsunami crashing into his soul. Buzz, buzz, buzz. The colorful light screen was getting more and more intense. Su Yu seemed to be able to see a terrifying figure galloping across the starry sky, crossing the boundary at high speed. Su Yu's silver hair was fluttering wildly in the darkness, causing it to flutter in a messy and flamboyant manner. Under the cover of the silver hair, a pair of deep eyes could be seen. At this moment, his eyes were filled with an indescribable radiance and coldness. In my whole life, I have been humble and downtrodden, but I have never lowered my head. Defiance is my undying will. Whoever wants to kill me will have to test my might. Swoosh! Su Yu put down Elder Gyo, then flew toward the crevice like a shooting star, leaving behind a bright afterimage in the night sky. Elder Gio was startled. "Stop. You can't block his gaze. Don't throw your life away for nothing." In his old eyes, Su Yu's figure was like a moth flying toward him. He was burning his life force to release the brightest radiance in his life. Su Yu's eyes were filled with determination. For Siener, for Xiaojingyu, for the Duke of Siener, for all the people he loved and was familiar with, it was worth it. Chapter 701. His fragmentary shadow was like an illusion, and Su Yu arrived in front of the crevice in an instant. Dry Cloud 5 Elemental Array. Eternal Stone Armor. 6 Directional Ruler. First Dragon Physique. All kinds of colors blossomed at the same time. Su Yu's body shone brightly, almost competing with the colorful light screen. Even so, Su Yu could feel that, in front of the approaching aura, all his defenses were as thin as paper. In just a short moment, Su Yu threw out countless magical treasures without hesitation and sealed them into the crevice. Talismans, divine artifacts, and even the semi-manufactured spirit artifact, the Purple Sun Profound Umbrella. Everything that contained powerful energy was thrown into the crack. Their collective self-detonation produced a tremendous amount of explosive energy. Even if it couldn't destroy the spatial tunnel, it was enough to produce a powerful impact that cut off the life force that continued to pour in. This way, they could stop the Blood Emperor from descending. Even if he knew it was impossible, he had to give it a try. Commendable courage. The Blood Emperor's majestic voice echoed from a distant place. It was unknown whether he was praising Su Yu or mocking him for overestimating himself. As the voice rang out, an invisible gaze pierced through space and shot over. The items and talismans that fell into the fissure instantly turned into nothingness. The exploding divine items and the eruption of energy instantly vanished into thin air. The raging red lotus flames that surged out of the Purple Sun Profound Umbrella were extinguished like a raging wave, leaving not a single trace behind. His gaze shot out of the crack and landed on Su Yu's body. Su Yu felt as if he had been struck by lightning, and his whole body retreated crazily like Elder Gio. The light barrier of the Dry Cloud 5 elemental formation shattered. The Eternal Stone King armor's barrier of light shattered. His gaze continued to pierce through the gaps in the armor. Clang! The 6 directional ruler held on for a moment before it bounced off. Puff! The golden veins of his first dragon physique expanded, but it couldn't block the penetrating gaze. In an instant, Su Yu's abdomen was pierced through. A long arrow of blood shot out from his back, leaving a long afterimage in the air. Su Yu! Elder Gio's eyes almost popped out of their sockets as he shouted in alarm. He endured his injuries and flew over to catch Su Yu. However, Su Yu's body still had an unimaginably great power. When Elder Gio took over, he was also pushed back by this great power. Bang bang, the two of them smashed through several mountains before finally crashing into a huge mountain. Dust filled the air. 2 figures covered in blood were motionless, as if they were dead. Cough cough. After a while, Elder Gio's body trembled slightly as he coughed out a mouthful of blood. Sensing that Su Yu's aura was getting weaker and weaker, Su Yu's heart was filled with grief. Why are you doing this? Even though you know that you will die, you still want to charge forward? He didn't understand. He knew how terrifying the Blood Emperor was and how dangerous it was to stand in front of the crack, yet he still rushed over and sacrificed himself for nothing. Su Yu's body was severely injured. His 4 limbs were shattered, especially his abdomen, which had been pierced through. Even his dantian was injured. One of his 3 vital energy crystals had turned into dust. At this moment, Su Yu could only move his fingertips. His lips opened and closed, and he revealed a faint smile with great difficulty. It's because the person I love is behind me. Elder Gio's heart trembled, and he felt an indescribable sadness in his heart. Was he willing to sacrifice his life for the lover he had never forgotten? In the past, I heard that this child traveled 1,000 miles to the imperial capital to fight a life and death battle for his father-in-law. For love, to become famous in the Phoenix cabinet, to break through and become a fairy. But now, for the sake of the vicissitudes of the world, for the sake of righteousness, he was like a moth flying into a flame, fighting against everything. Kindness, affection, and righteousness were the most important in his life. However, such an outstanding person had fallen along with the Zhenlong continent, embroiled in an ancient grudge. As Elder Jiu looked at the gradually weakening Su Yu and felt the Blood Emperor approaching him, his eyes became filled with sorrow. Su Yu was finished, and the Zhenlong continent was finished. The whole world was finished. Buzz, buzz. The crack's light screen trembled, and the whole dragon abyss of the 9 underworlds trembled. Mountain rocks tumbled down unceasingly, and many terrifying cracks spread across the dragon abyss like a spider's web. Earth fire surged out of the cracks, and it condensed into a scarlet lava that filled the sky. The dragon abyss turned into a sea of flames. Outside the dragon abyss, the sea's waves reached the sky, and a fierce wind blew. Countless powerful sea beasts were fleeing in terror, as if they were facing the end of the world. Black clouds surged in the sky, and the earth was engulfed in darkness. The whole continent was engulfed in dark clouds, and the weather changed drastically. As everyone looked at this strange phenomenon, they were all frightened, and a bad premonition welled up in their hearts. The northern continent, the central continent, the southern continent, the western continent, and the boundless sea, all of the spiritual beings were trembling, as they felt a terrifying aura engulfing the Zhenlong continent. It was as if a terrifying living being was slowly entering the Zhenlong continent from somewhere. At the top of the world's peak of the Empire of Darkness, a handsome middle-aged man, who was wearing a black robe, was standing alone on a cliff overlooking the clouds. His eyebrows were like swords, and his eyes were like stars. He was standing still, but he looked down on the world, as if he was the most powerful person in the world. As he looked in the direction of the dragon abyss of the 9 underworlds, the black-robed middle-aged man's eyes turned cold, and a sharp light shot out of them. Light splashed everywhere, and the whole world trembled. "You have finally come. I have been waiting for you for 10,000 years," the black-robed middle-aged man said slowly. In the dragon abyss, earth fire was boiling, and the whole world was shaking. Rocks were falling into the lava, and they disappeared. If a person fell into the lava, his corpse would definitely be destroyed. Elder Jiu struggled to help Su Yu up. The two of them, who were covered in blood, supported each other, and looked at the volcano on the mountain peak. Their gazes pierced through the thick smoke and the blazing flames, and they stared at the crack's light screen. Suddenly, the light screen stopped trembling, the lava stopped boiling, and the falling rocks stopped rolling. It was as if the entire world had gone silent, so silent that not a single sound could be heard. The only thing that could be heard was Su Yu and Elder Jiu's breathing. He had come. When Su Yu looked at the light screen with his naked eye, he could vaguely see a black figure. He was majestic and powerful. Even looking at him made one feel suffocated and desperate. Su Yu knew that this was a terrifying expert, whose cultivation level was much lower than his. Zhenlong. I haven't heard this name for a long time, and I haven't heard this aura for a long time. The majestic figure in the light screen sighed in a low voice. Then, he slowly stepped out of the crack. All of a sudden, the whole dragon abyss trembled, and the whole Zhenlong continent shook. It was as if they were afraid and couldn't bear it anymore. No matter if it was a mortal or a martial artist, a human or a monster, a high-level creature or a weak ant, all of them felt a sense of dread in their hearts, as if they were about to die. Su Yu's gaze suddenly became sharp, and he fixed it on the footprints left by his opponent. He also fixed his gaze on the ground where his foot was about to land. What was difficult to see with the naked eye was that there was a black hair hidden on the ground where his foot was going to land. It was an item that was filled with a terrifying demonic aura, and it could cause anyone's heart to palpitate. This was the item that Su Yu had obtained when he killed the demon. It contained a shocking demonic aura, and once it entered one's body, the demonic aura would be able to disturb one's mind and taint one's soul. Even a divine master expert would be killed by it. However, Su Yu didn't know whether it would be effective against an all-creation expert. He could only give it a try. Interesting. So, it was just a scheme. Su Yu's expression stiffened when he saw that the Blood Emperor's foot had suddenly stopped. Just now, when you randomly threw things here, it was just a diversionary tactic, and your true trump card is here. As Su Yu chuckled, the devil's hair, which was buried in the ground, came out of the ground. It emitted a black luster, and it was filled with a terrifying demonic aura. The demon of the past was really terrifying, and this hair could even pose a threat to me. It's a pity that you used it inappropriately. After he removed the trap, the Blood Emperor's foot landed on the ground. However, when it was about to touch the ground, it stopped abruptly, and emotions appeared in his mouth for the first time. Well, it's a series of traps. Lad, I really didn't expect that your schemes were so profound. Pop! As a muffled sound echoed, a small black flag slowly floated out of the ground beneath the devil's hair. A big hand stretched out of the light screen and grasped the small black flag. What a terrifying evil energy! A grave voice could be heard coming from the fissure, and fear could be heard in it. This small flag was the Ice Soul Divine Dream spell, which he had obtained from the mysterious Heavenly Divine Pavilion. It was a famous illusion spell, but Su Yu, who had been possessed by the evil god, had modified it and imbued it with a wisp of evil energy. Lad, who gave you this evil energy? The Blood Emperor's voice was grave, and his foot stopped in midair. Su Yu's face became pale, as all of his trump cards were seen through. Answer me. Who did it? The Blood Emperor swept his gaze over the dragon abyss, as if he was afraid of some hidden enemy. He had misunderstood that there was an unknown and terrifying existence hidden in the Zhenlong abyss. Fine, I will know once I probe it. All of a sudden, two beams of light shot out of the fissure. Su Yu and Jiu Yuanzhou didn't even have the time to react before they were struck by them. Su Yu felt an intense pain in his head, as it seemed like something had just struck the divine nine-dragon cauldron and caused it to tremble slightly. Su Yu was overwhelmed with shock, as this was the first time that something had managed to shake the divine nine-dragon cauldron. As he looked at Elder Jiu, his consciousness became blurry, as his soul was being invaded. A fairy artifact-level soul defense treasure? The Blood Emperor was startled once again, and his voice became gloomy. Great waves were raging in his heart. How could a lad from a trifling wasteland possess a fairy artifact? However, just after this, he chuckled calmly. It turns out that the Zhenlong Abyss doesn't have any powerful enemies. Does this mean that the evil energy and the fairy artifact were obtained by you? Elder Jiu became clear-headed at this moment, and he cried out in a gloomy voice, You searched my soul and searched my memories. The two beams of light from a moment ago had been used in such a way, and if he searched Elder Jiu's memories, he would know that they had fought to the death, and that they didn't have any powerful enemies. Su Yu and Elder Jiu both sank into despair. I lost a fairy artifact to cross over to another world, but I still managed to obtain a rare soul defense fairy artifact. It isn't a loss for me. The Blood Emperor chuckled calmly as he looked at Jiu Yuanzhou. I will give you a chance to return to the Bright Light Guard. Kill him and give his corpse to me. You probably want to recover your past cultivation, don't you? Jiu Yuanzhou was one of the Bright Light Guard's 3 strongest guards, so it was easy to guess his past cultivation. At the very least, he was a late-stage divine master. Jiu Yuanzhou's pupils contracted, and a bright glint appeared in his eyes. However, it was extinguished in an instant. I, Jiu Yuanzhou, betrayed the Bright Light Guard, so how can I return to it? Don't tell me that I will follow you and slaughter a whole world's living beings? Jiu Yuanzhou had betrayed the Bright Light Guard because he refused to participate in the destruction of the Zhenlong continent. Then, he was almost killed by the Blood Emperor with a single palm strike. Although he managed to survive, his cultivation had fallen to this day. Moreover, Jiu Yuanzhou glared at the Blood Emperor angrily. Moreover, you just played with me and made me kill Su Yu with my own hands. After I kill him, you will immediately kill me. It seemed like the Blood Emperor already knew his answer, and he spoke in an indifferent tone, which contained a faint hint of mockery. You are quite smart. You still remember that I don't accept traitors. Since that's the case, then everything has come to an end. I will personally send you on your way. The Blood Emperor chuckled calmly as he stepped out of the dragon abyss of the 9 underworlds. Chapter 702. The Blood Emperor's footsteps stopped abruptly, and a bad premonition filled his heart. However, before he could react, Su Yu shouted in a deep voice, "Little Kylan." Suddenly, a cloud of pink mist appeared in the empty void above the fissure. In the mist, a delicate and adorable Qilin was blinking its big bright eyes mischievously. In its small mouth was a small green bead. The dark green bead suddenly flashed, and a blue and yellow bead fell from it. It was 5 feet in size. His falling speed was abnormally fast, and he appeared abruptly without any warning. The Blood Emperor only had time to take a look before the blue and yellow ball fell. One of his outstretched hands and one of his feet were crushed to the ground with a loud bang. It's the Ghost Festival Great Emperor's Underworld Pearl. The Blood Emperor cried out involuntarily as if he was extremely frightened. He immediately recognized the pearl. After all, he had personally participated in the Great War between humans and ghosts. He had personally witnessed the terrifying scene of the all creation's old monsters of the human race being reduced to dust by the Underworld Pearl. Now that the Underworld Pearl had reappeared, how could he not be afraid? By the time he regained his composure, the Underworld Pearl had already smashed down. Bang! The entire dragon abyss of the 9 underworlds trembled, and lava shot up hundreds of meters into the air. The terrifyingly huge force at close range affected the crack. The widening spatial tunnel that was about to take shape suddenly shattered. The curtain of light shook violently and flickered indeterminately. This was the sign of destruction. The spatial passageway was destroyed. After 3 consecutive designs, he finally succeeded. Even an all-creation's old monster would not be able to come out unscathed in the collapsed space channel. Moreover, one of his hands and one of his feet were pressed outside the crack. Kid, I will make sure that not even your bones remain. The Blood Emperor was finally enraged, and he no longer had the bearing of a sovereign overlooking the world. He roared in anger. As he struggled, half of his body stepped out of the crack. However, little Qilin wrinkled its nose and stepped on his face with its hoof, forcing him back. The Blood Emperor was enraged, and his gaze, which seemed to exterminate everything, swept over the little Qilin. Unexpectedly, the little Qilin immediately escaped into the void, unable to do anything. The Blood Emperor wanted to free himself from the Underworld Pearl, but he was shocked to discover that his all-creation power was unable to move the Underworld Pearl at all. No matter how it struggled, the Underworld Pearl did not budge at all. He simply couldn't step out of the crack. He was forcibly fixed in place. Once the spatial rift completely collapsed, his torso within the rift would suffer unprecedented damage. The Blood Emperor looked fiercely in Su Yu's direction, but there was no one there. Su Yu and Jiu Yuanzhou had already hidden themselves to prevent the Blood Emperor from launching a counterattack. Unable to kill them, the Blood Emperor flew into a rage and shouted coldly, "Brat, I will remember you. We will meet again." Puff, with 2 muffled sounds, the suppressed hands and feet inexplicably went limp. The terrifying aura behind the crack instantly dissipated. Then, the light screen cracked, dimmed, and disappeared. In the end, only the ordinary stone wall was left, standing quietly. If it wasn't for the fact that the depths of the dragon abyss had turned into a world of lava, no one would believe that an all-creation monster had almost entered this place. The passage between the two worlds was completely severed. The people of the 9 states could no longer enter. The people of the true dragon had also lost their chance to go to the world of the 9 prefectures. The Zhenlong continent was completely sealed off, forming a world of its own. After a long while, Su Yu and Elder Jiu looked at each other and laughed. Haha! I never dreamed that the Blood Emperor, such an influential figure in the land of the 9 prefectures, would be defeated by a young man like you. Elder Jiu laughed for a long time. Tears rolled down from the corners of his eyes. He seemed to be very pleased. Su Yu revolved his vital energy with great difficulty to stop the bleeding in his abdomen. He then smiled bitterly and said, "If I could, I would rather not have come here." The losses he had suffered in this trip to the dragon abyss of the 9 underworlds were unimaginable. His 2 puppets, the Purple Sun Incredible Umbrella, almost all of his divine artifacts and talismans, and the Dry Cloud 5 elemental formations 4 formation pearls were all damaged. Most importantly, his Dantian had been severely damaged, and a vital energy crystal had turned into powder. It was still unknown what these injuries signified. Unexpectedly, Elder Jiu rolled his eyes and said, "The Blood Emperor left behind an arm and a leg, yet you are still not satisfied? The blood essence of an all-creation old monster is so powerful that you can't even begin to imagine it." Su Yu's spirit was shaken, and his gaze locked onto the arm and foot that were suppressed by the underworld pearl. It was obvious that the arm and foot had been severed, but it still emitted a terrifying aura. Extracting the blood essence from it and feeding it to the living creatures of heaven and earth will help them evolve. Elder Jiu's eyes lit up as he spoke. Just like the heavenly orchid silver bamboo, it was almost impossible for it to survive. It could only rely on the blood essence of all creation's old monsters to water it day and night. Was he referring to little Qilin? Elder Jiu was a guard of light, so he should have recognized the little Kylan's true spirit. Su Yu's expression was calm as he said, "Elder Jiu, please part with this pair of arms and legs. I really need them." "What are you talking about? You saved me, and you also saved the people of the Zhenlong continent. The Blood Emperor was also forced to retreat by you, so the spoils of war naturally belong to you." Elder Jiu laughed heartily. He didn't seem to have any intention of snatching the spoils of war. If Elder Jiu really coveted this pair of hands and feet, why would he inform Su Yu? So what if he took a step back and killed Su Yu and snatched his treasures? "Elder Jiu, many thanks for helping me." Su Yu cupped his fists and thanked him. The two of them rested on the spot for a while, barely regaining their ability to move. Su Yu retrieved the underworld pearl and sealed the pair of arms that were emitting a shocking aura. Su Yu also found the demon's hair and the formation flag. Although he had suffered a great loss, he had also gained a great deal. "Let's go. Su Yu, your name will spread far and wide. None of the heroes of the future will be able to compete with you. In fact, you are almost on par with the Jojo Emperor in the past. Even the King of Darkness won't be able to overshadow your brilliance." Elder Jiu smiled in relief. Su Yu smiled. The Jojo Emperor in the past sacrificed a lot of his blood essence to reclaim the continent. How can I compare to him? Now that the continent is sealed, the path of martial arts has come to an end. Fame and fortune aren't important anymore. Su Yu smiled. "It's time for me to retire." Time passed quickly, and half a year had passed. The otherworldly remnants had been completely wiped out. The Zhenlong continent had been completely reclaimed. The Heavenly Law Alliance, with the help of countless cloud-galloping horses, created more than 100 fairy realm warriors. They conquered all 4 continents and replaced the Empire of Darkness to control the whole continent. The continent's factions were divided by the Heavenly Law Alliance, and no one was allowed to fight against them. Anyone who disobeyed them would be annihilated by more than 100 fairy realm warriors. For a time, the continent welcomed an unprecedented peace. The various martial arts techniques were spared from the scourge of war, and the factions' orthodoxies were passed on. After experiencing the chaos of the otherworldly war, the martial artists were vigilant in times of peace, and they worked hard to become stronger. The big and small factions paid more attention to the cultivation of talents, and they did not restrict themselves to recruiting qualified disciples. After 10,000 years, the continent's martial arts techniques began to flourish again. As for the Heavenly Law Alliance, it became the holy land of martial arts techniques in the world. Although it did not recruit external disciples, it was still regarded as the holy land of the continent. More than 100 fairy realm warriors tore through time and space, and no one dared to disobey them. As for the Heavenly Law Alliance's master, who was an unparalleled legend, he became an existence that everyone worshipped and worshipped. From Shunhui Island, he had risen like a comet, flying across the Zhenlong continent's time and space. As Su Yu, he had killed more than half of the Lucian faction's elders. At the Phoenix Cabinet's Great Meet, he had fought against Shin Kong as Yin Yu, as well as the three great factions. As for the North Continent's alliance, he had overturned the alliance as the Black Snow Devil King. After 3 years, he had returned as Su Yu, annihilating the otherworldly fairy realm, restoring the continent, and repelling all creations. Each and every one of them was a story that shook the world. Many people said that Su Yu's life was a legend. He had inspired countless youths of the continent to use him as a role model and train diligently. In fact, countless martial artists even rushed to the places where Su Yu had fought and lived, to comprehend the traces of his past training. The Shunhui Island, the Lucian faction, the Shintian Manor, and the Inyu area were all regarded as holy lands for training. Strong martial artists from all over the world gathered there to exchange pointers. Of course, the Heavenly Law Alliance's headquarters, the Dragon Abyss of the 9 Underworlds, became a holy land that attracted countless martial artists from all over the world. The Dragon Abyss of the 9 Underworlds, which had already collapsed, was occupied by the Heavenly Law Alliance and transformed into an island city. However, no one could deny that it was the true center of the Zhenlong continent, the holy land of martial arts technique. This was because this was the place where Su Yu, the continent's king, resided. Seeing his true appearance was something that everyone on the continent, regardless of whether they were men or women. It was a pity that this king had returned from the Dragon Abyss of the 9 Underworlds. He had hidden himself in the forest and never appeared in the world again. Even so, there were still countless martial artists on the Dragon Abyss of the 9 Underworlds island, waiting for the king of the continent to show himself. In the Heavenly Law Alliance's palace on the Dragon Abyss Island, hundreds of fairies, thousands of half-fairies, and tens of thousands of half-gods guarded the depths of the palace. In a quiet, simple, and tranquil courtyard, inside the stone door, which was filled with dense spiritual energy, a young man was sitting cross-legged. A ball of spiritual energy gathered on top of his head and slowly flowed into his skull. However, it flowed out of his abdomen. He opened his eyes and sighed softly. So, this is the case? The vital energy crystal in my dantian has shattered, and I can no longer absorb spiritual energy to recast my vital energy crystal. My martial path has come to an end. Regret, bitterness, and loneliness appeared on his face. When he had been struck by the Blood Emperor's gaze, one of his vital energy crystals had shattered. After half a year, he had flipped through many ancient books on the Zhenlong continent and tried all sorts of methods, but he was still unable to repair it. If nothing unexpected happened, he would be stuck at the 2 crystals half-fairy realm for the rest of his life. How regretful would it be for him to stop before the fairy realm? To Su Yu, who had a firm heart for martial arts, it was a life regret. As he sighed, Su Yu took out the Thunder Herb armor. It was filled with nearly 1,000 disastrous thunders. These were the disastrous thunders that he had collected from the Thunder Herb to help the people of the Alliance overcome their tribulations. However, there was no disastrous thunder that belonged to him among them. This scene made him feel even more melancholy. After thinking for a moment, he touched the 9-jade spiritual pearl with his fingertip. A round ball that was 5 feet wide and covered in blue and yellow patterns appeared in his palm. It was as light as a feather. I refined the underworld pearl 4 months ago. I can already control it skillfully. It's a pity that I can no longer use it. Su Yu's expression became even more desolate. After pausing for a moment, Su Yu took out a dazzling seal surrounded by 5 colored thunderbolt. The 5 elemental strong thunder seal had been forcibly captured by Dark Su Yu and refined into the 5 elemental strong thunder seal. Chapter 703. The path of martial arts has been severed from now on, and there is no one in the world who can fight me. What is the point of having it? Su Yu slowly closed his eyes, and a sense of loneliness assaulted his heart. After putting away the Thunder Herb armor and the Underworld Pearl, Su Yu revolved his cultivation technique. He had already comprehended the Buddhist saint's 8 characters to the final level, the first level of great perfection, the swordsman character. He had completely comprehended the 4-word formula of Lin Bing Doge. The heaven's sun gazing at air had already reached the minor mastery level, allowing him to control 2 experts of a higher realm at the same time. Su Yu could already skillfully use the heaven-extinguishing divine palm's great moon palm. Although he wasn't as good as Elder Jiao, he had already mastered it. After cultivating for some time, Su Yu's mind entered the 9-jade spiritual pearl. Young master, how is your dantian? Is the ancient book that you were provided effective? Wu Aoyue welcomed him. Even though she was already a level 2 fairy, she was still as cold and detached as before. But when she faced Su Yu, she was quite gentle. Su Yu forced himself to focus and shook his head. Has it not been repaired? Wu Aoyue's complexion turned gloomy, and her mood became gloomy. I wasn't interested in the art of medicine at that time, so I didn't read too many ancient books in this field. If I could return to the faction, forget it. The Zhenlong continent is sealed off, and the path of martial arts has been severed. What's the point of having a cultivation level? Tell me about the Chaos Rainbow Butterfly. Has it swallowed all of the Blood Emperor's blood essence? The Blood Emperor's blood was originally prepared for the little Kylan. However, it wasn't interested in such things. Unexpectedly, the Chaos multicolored butterfly yearned for it very much. It was extremely surprised. After devouring it, its growth was astonishing, and its effects were even stronger than when it devoured the heavenly orchid silver bamboo. Young master, it's already 3 inches long, and it's been abnormally active recently. According to the ancient records, it's about to start spitting silk, and we can harvest the first batch of silk. Wu Aoyue finally regained her spirits. After all, with Su Yu's knowledge and magical treasures, who in the Zhenlong world could contend against him? Apart from the mysterious King of Darkness, no one would be a match for him. Moreover, after gathering the chaotic multicolored butterfly silk, he would be able to weave it into a heaven-defying armor that even all creations would find hard to break. It would be like adding wings to a tiger, and even the King of Darkness would have to bow down to him. One resided deep in the continent, while the other resided in the sea. Between the 2 monarchs, it was up to them to decide who was superior and who was inferior. Thank you for your hard work, Su Yu did not look forward to it much. He was excited. After giving a simple order, he strode to the nursery of the highest rare earths. Within half a year, the 2 heavenly orchid silver bamboos had grown to a height of 20 feet. Sir, according to the ancient books, Tu Zhang is half mature, and it is at least 500 years old. In another half a year, it will mature, and we can then use it to craft a magical artifact. Wu Aoyue carefully observed Su Yu's calm expression and introduced him with a strong mental energy. He needed to refine the heavenly orchid silver bamboo swords, gather 9 of them, and use the 9 suns cosmos sword formation. In the past, he had looked forward to it endlessly, but now he had lost interest in it. His gaze swept over calmly and landed on the profound feather spiritual pomegranate. The small sapling that was once as tall as a person had now grown into a towering tree that required 10 people to wrap their arms around. The snow-like tree was covered with golden fruits, and the number of them could be counted in the thousands. As for the cloud-galloping horses, they had already multiplied to over 100. Moreover, they were still multiplying at an even faster speed. In less than a month, he would be able to create another 100 fairies. However, none of this mattered anymore. If you want to go out, you can do so at any time. There is no need for you to continue staying here. Suyu turned around and looked at Wu Aoyue. He had already promised to let her roam the Zhenlong continent. Since she could not return to Jiuzhou, she no longer had any relationship with Zhenlong. She remained silent and stayed in the 9 jade spiritual pearl, quietly taking care of this world. At this moment, when she heard his words, she remained silent. Only her lips moved, as if she wanted to say something. Fine, as you wish. Whenever you want to leave, you can send a message to me. Suyu patted her shoulder and his soul left. After returning to his body, Suyu was extremely bored. Suddenly, he heard a melodious voice coming from outside the door. Alliance Master Su, it has been half a year. Old Qin wishes to see you. Outside the door, a beautiful figure could be seen. It was Zi Yunxiang, whom he had not seen for a long time. She had already broken through to the fairy realm, and was willing to accompany the annihilation team to guard outside the stone door and protect Suyu. Everyone in the alliance knew about this. Creak. The stone door opened and dust rose into the air. Suyu, who was wearing a white robe, stepped out. This was the first time he had come out of seclusion after half a year. The bright sunlight shone into his eyes. It was slightly dazzling, and Suyu subconsciously shielded his eyes. When he put down his palm, he saw many familiar figures standing quietly in front of him. The annihilation team led by Luo Xiong. At the back of the team was a beautiful figure with her head lowered, not daring to look at him. Welcome out of seclusion, Alliance Master. Luo Xiong's eyes were filled with excitement. He and the annihilation team knelt down on one knee and shouted respectfully from the bottom of their hearts. Their loud and clear voices traveled in all directions. The 100 fairies outside the courtyard heard the voice and were pleasantly surprised. Regardless of whether they were training, sparring, or handling official business, they all flew out of the house and gathered outside the courtyard. They all knelt down and said, "Welcome out of seclusion, Alliance Master." The thousands of half-fairies in the palace all looked shocked. Their expressions were filled with respect and reverence. Clatter. All the half-fairies put down whatever they were doing and said, "Welcome out of seclusion, Alliance Master." The tens of thousands of half-gods outside the palace also knelt down. The tens of thousands of people knelt down, their voices shaking the sky. Inside and outside the island, there was an uproar. The martial artists on the island were overjoyed, and they rushed out of the palace like a tidal wave. The martial artists outside the island rushed back to the island. Some of the people who had just left the island returned at an even faster speed. The hearts of the people were in an uproar. The legendary king of the continent, the legendary Heavenly Law Alliance Master, had come out of seclusion. The tide was like a tidal wave. However, on a reef above the sea, a young man in luxurious clothes stood with his hands clasped behind his back. His demeanor was peerless, and his warm expression carried a hint of coldness. His eyes were piercing, and the space between his brows was emitting a purple light. He looked at the dragon abyss of the 9 underworlds and smiled coldly. "I haven't seen you for half a year, and you are already the king of the continent. You are no longer the lucky lad you were in the mysterious heavenly divine pavilion all those years ago. Inu, we will meet again soon." His voice lingered in the air, but there was no one on the reef. The deafening voice penetrated Su Yu's ears. Su Yu merely smiled. You may rise. His voice was faint, but it was like thunder from the heavens. It rumbled in the dragon abyss of the 9 underworlds and was extremely majestic. When the crowd looked up, it was as if they were looking at the figure of a king. Zi Yunxiang's body shook. When she looked up, she saw that the figure was still that familiar youth. However, he was as majestic as an emperor, and no one dared to approach him. Mind your own business, Su Yu said. The people of the Heavenly Law Alliance obeyed. Yunxiang, let old Chen come over. Su Yu looked at Zi Yunxiang, his eyes filled with gentleness as he spoke softly. Zi Yunxiang bit her lip, then left the courtyard and led old Chen inside. Greetings, Alliance Master. Welcome back, Alliance Master. Old Chen knelt down on one knee. He was extremely respectful. Now that he was a grade 2 fairy, his respect for Su Yu had increased. Su Yu smiled. Old Chen, you don't need to be so courteous. Did you report to me about that? Old Chen nodded. Yes. The wedding has already been prepared, and invitations have been sent to all parts of the continent. In 10 days, the whole world will witness the wedding between Alliance Master and Qin Xian'er. Hearing this, Luo Xiong and the others became excited. Su Yu's wedding would definitely be a big event that would shake the whole Zhenlong continent. Those who were invited all felt extremely honored. Zi Yunxiang's body trembled, and her eyes became misty. The day that was supposed to come had finally come. Su Yu smiled. Xian'er's promise can finally be fulfilled, and the whole world will witness our unfinished wedding. Su Yu smiled and said, I can finally fulfill Xian'er's promise and let the whole world witness our unfinished wedding. Chapter 704. Brother Su Yu, you finally woke up. Xian'er missed you so much. Outside the courtyard, a petite figure quickly ran over. Su Yu was pleasantly surprised. She was like a helpless little bird as she threw herself into Su Yu's embrace. A fragrant breeze blew past. Su Yu felt a familiar aura, a familiar figure, and a familiar temperature. Su Yu smiled gently and lowered his head to look at her. He had known her since she was 14 years old, and now she was 18 years old. It seemed like time had not left much of a mark on her. Apart from being slightly more mature, she was still the same as when they had first met in the Twilight Mountains. She had a snow-white oval face and 2 crystal-like big eyes. Her long eyelashes covered her eyes. She had a sharp nose, and her lips were as red as cherries. She was like a porcelain doll that had been molded out of clay. At this moment, her bright eyes were filled with joy that came from the depths of her heart. She was no longer shy when she hugged Su Yu in front of everyone. It was as if they were family. Xian'er. Su Yu stroked her head lovingly. How has father been in the past 6 months? Xian'er lay in his embrace and nodded her head. Yes, father is fine. He just misses you a lot. Su Yu's smile was filled with warmth. After 7 years, it's time for the old man's wish to be fulfilled. Xian'er, are you ready? A blush appeared on Xian'er's porcelain-like skin. She was as beautiful as the sunset. Yes. Xian'er said shyly as she leaned deeper into his embrace. I'm the happiest. I want to be your bride forever. Seeing such a happy scene, the crowd couldn't help but smile. Those who knew the truth couldn't help but praise them. After going through so many hardships, the two of them had finally gotten together. They had traveled through the snow in search of plum blossoms. After pausing for a moment, Su Yu raised his brows. Xian'er, why haven't you broken through? Even the fairy pill can't help you? Xian'er had already broken through to the 3 crystals half-fairy realm before Su Yu had gone to the dragon abyss of the 9 underworld. After that, the cloud-galloping horse that Su Yu had left behind could help other people break through, but it had no effect on her. It seemed like Xian'er's breakthrough had brought her to a strange level. Ordinary medicines couldn't help her break through. After a thorough examination, Zhang Xian was unable to find any clues at all. Thus, he deduced that it was most likely due to her unique constitution. The Death Phoenix constitution was Sien-Er's constitution. It originated from the 9 Hell Phoenix and was the most mysterious and terrifying constitution in the world. Even Yun Yazi, with his vision, had once wanted to take in such a disciple, but he was unable to do so. The Death Phoenix physique was the main obstacle to her breakthrough. Suyu had the intention to ask Yun Yazi, but it was a pity that after he left the mysterious Heavenly Divine Pavilion, he seemed to have used up a lot of his energy and had fallen into a deep slumber. He had yet to wake up. In the end, before Suyu went into seclusion, he gave his only fairy pill to Sien-Er. This elixir was obtained from the mysterious Heavenly Divine Pavilion, where Tianjizi's elixirs were passed down. It was personally refined by Tianjizi, and it was said to be a nature-defying divine elixir that had a 100% chance of breaking through to the fairy realm. With Tianjizi's cultivation, it was not an exaggeration to say that this pill had a 100% success rate. Perhaps some special constitutions were also taken into account. Thus, this pill was left for Sien-Er. However, she still hadn't made a breakthrough. Suyu couldn't help but furrow his brows. Could it be that even Sien-Er wouldn't be able to make a breakthrough to the fairy realm in her lifetime? No, my intuition tells me that this pill can help me break through. My body seems to desire this pill. Sien-Er shook her head. Suyu was delighted, but he was startled. You didn't swallow it? Why? Don't you want to break through to the fairy realm? Sien-Er raised her head and looked at Suyu's face, which had become much thinner. She extended her small hand and stroked his cheek. Yes, I want to break through to the fairy realm even in my dreams. But I want you to break through to the fairy realm even more, because your eyes are filled with loneliness. Is it because of me? Suyu unknowingly hugged her even tighter. Sien-Er's small heart was always filled with him, and she was always thinking about him. When Suyu came back to his senses, he suddenly realized. When did Sien-Er become so sharp? She can already see through my heart? Suyu lowered his head and looked at her gem-like eyes. It was only then that he realized that the playful young princess had already grown up. Thank you, Sien-Er. Suyu smiled. A warm feeling filled his heart and expelled his loneliness. He couldn't chase after the Martial Path's peak, yet he still had a beautiful wife to accompany him for the rest of his life. Sien-Er, you should consume it. My power has already reached the peak of this world, so it doesn't matter whether I consume it or not. Suyu revealed a faint smile. Sien-Er shook her head stubbornly. No, I want to leave it for you. Once your injuries are healed, you can consume it. Suyu wanted to dissuade her, but when he saw how resolute she was, he could only give up. In any case, the Zhenlong world had regained its peace, and with his protection, no one could harm Sien. He still had a long way to go, and he would find a way to make her consume it. Then, how are Jingyu and the Phoenix Cabinet's master? Have they woken up? Suyu asked. Sien-Er raised her head, delight appearing on her face. Sister Jingyu has already woken up. What? She has finally woken up? Suyu felt as if a great burden had been lifted from his heart. She had been asleep for such a long time, so she should have woken up a long time ago. Yet, she still hadn't woken up. Suyu was worried that something unexpected had happened. However, the master of the Phoenix Cabinet is still in a deep sleep. I don't know why, but there were a few times when she was about to wake up, but she went back to sleep. Sien-Er's face darkened. After all, the master of the Phoenix Cabinet was her teacher. How could she not be concerned? Suyu was deeply concerned, and his voice turned solemn. Let's go and take a look. All of you, carry out your duties. Suyu instructed them briefly, then rushed to the heart-nurturing palace, which was a forbidden area in the palace with Sien-Er. This place was guarded by 10 fairies day and night, and even a mosquito would find it difficult to intrude. In the Hall of Mental Cultivation, there were the best doctors in the continent taking care of them at all times. Stepping into the hall, a skinny, pale-faced figure came into view. The master of the Phoenix Cabinet frowned and fell into a deep sleep. Suyu tapped her wrist with his finger and transferred a shred of spiritual energy into her body. At once, Suyu raised his eyebrows and revealed a shocked expression. This power. It's very familiar, isn't it? It's the power of all creation. Suddenly, Elder Gio's solemn voice came from behind. He had nowhere to go, so he stayed in the Heavenly Law Union. He had personally checked on the Phoenix Cabinet's master's injuries. Suyu's expression changed. What's going on? Why is there an additional power of all creation? It shouldn't have suddenly appeared. It's likely that it was hidden in her body all along, but we didn't notice it until recently. Elder Gio furrowed his brows as he was also confused. A Zhenlong didn't have an all creation, so it couldn't have entered her body later on. Was she injured by an all creation? Suyu's gaze became solemn as he sank into deep thought. All of a sudden, he and Elder Gio looked at each other, and shock appeared in their eyes at the same time. Could it be the so-called Great Saint Master? The two of them asked in a deep voice. Through the battle at the Dragon Abyss of the 9 Underworlds, they had learned from the third Saint Master that the Great Saint Master had already been in the Zhenlong continent for a long time. However, she had hidden herself well and had never shown herself. She was also a hidden danger that Suyu was extremely wary of. However, when he thought about it carefully, he felt that it wasn't really possible. If the Great Saint Master had such a cultivation, why would she hide herself? Why would she waste the Blood Emperor's fairy artifact to cross the world? Chapter 705. The 2015 Elimination of Pornography and Illegal Publications campaign is being carried out, and the Yuewan Group will cooperate with the relevant departments to submit the information. Sienna clenched her fists. If I had studied medicine diligently in the past, my teacher wouldn't have ended up like this. Sienna, who had once concentrated on the martial path, had rejected the Phoenix Master Chio's medical inheritance. With the continent's best medical skill, if Sienna had studied it diligently, she might have been able to understand the Phoenix Master Chio's injuries. Everything will get better, so you don't need to worry about it. Suyu patted her shoulder and comforted her in a soft voice. Sienna nodded and replied in a soft voice. At this moment, light footsteps could be heard coming from outside the hall. As a faint fragrance wafted in the air, a beautiful figure appeared before everyone's eyes. She had picturesque features, a jade-like nose and rosy lips. Her facial features were so exquisite that they seemed like jade carvings. At first glance, she seemed like a celestial fairy, yet she also seemed like a celestial fairy in a painting. Such a beauty could only be found in the heavens, yet it was rare to find one in the human world. She was so beautiful that all flowers paled in comparison to her. Even the sun and the moon paled in comparison to her. Even Elder Gio, who was a peerless expert in the past, couldn't help but shudder at this moment, and his pupils contracted slightly. Jingyu. Suyu was delighted, but he still felt ashamed of his inferiority in front of such a beauty. She was still as beautiful as before, and it was difficult for anyone to look at her directly. However, when Suyu looked into her eyes, he found them unfamiliar. Okay. Xia Jingyu nodded and wore an indifferent expression. Although she didn't seem cold, she didn't seem happy to see Suyu again. Suyu felt like there was an invisible barrier between them. Xia Jingyu held a bowl of medicinal soup and placed it in front of the table. She didn't look at anyone. The medicine is already prepared. Since you are all here, I will let you feed it to her. Xia Jingyu's tone was calm and emotionless. After she finished speaking, she turned around and left, leaving behind only a faint fragrance. Everyone was startled by her words. Brother Suyu, Sister Jingyu seems to have changed. Sienna looked at Xia Jingyu's departing figure in a daze. Suyu was confused and nervous. Could it be that Xia Jingyu still had some side effects that she hadn't noticed? Sienna, take good care of the Phoenix Master Chio, while I go and check up on Jingyu. Sienna nodded. Okay, Brother Suyu, you should go quickly. I'm also very worried about Sister Jingyu. Suyu tapped the ground with the tip of his foot and chased after her. He followed her scent all the way to the courtyard where she was resting. As soon as he entered the palace, Suyu was stunned. In the courtyard there were clusters of pear trees. Unfortunately, it was autumn, so only withered branches remained. The dark yellow leaves rustled in the wind. Under the pear blossoms, in front of a stone table, a peerless figure sat quietly, facing a tree and drinking alone. This familiar scene evoked pleasant memories in his mind. Do you still remember? Under the pear blossom tree, the full moon shines. You taught me the holy will. Xia Jingyu didn't turn around. She sipped her wine and said slowly. Suyu was disappointed and frustrated. He walked into the courtyard and sat on the stone bench opposite her. I remember. Suyu poured himself a cup of wine, his heart suddenly heavy. Unfortunately, things have changed, and so have people. Xia Jingyu raised her eyes and looked at Suyu. Her gaze was distant, as if she didn't have the slightest bit of warmth. Suyu didn't reply. He drank a mouthful of wine. In the mysterious heavenly divine pavilion, in the wisest Milky Way formation, there were 3 black boxes. I obtained Tianjizi's divine decree in one, and you obtained the real dragon spirit veins in the other. According to our agreement, we will share the 3rd box equally. Now, take it out, Xia Jingyu said indifferently, her tone as if she was talking to a stranger. Suyu nodded. He didn't intend to monopolize this item. He took out a black iron box, which had yet to be opened. Xia Jingyu flicked her finger, and the black iron box opened. A shocking aroma wafted out. As the aroma entered his nose, Suyu felt his spirit increase, and he was full of vitality. Suyu's expression changed from the corner of his eye. He saw that the yellow leaves of the pear blossoms in the depths of autumn actually glowed with new green. Snow-white pear blossoms bloomed continuously. The barren ground in the courtyard also sprouted like bamboo shoots after a rain. Grass grew at a speed visible to the naked eye. For a moment it was as if time had reversed. It was extremely shocking. Suyu was startled. Suddenly, his expression changed abruptly. Vital energy gushed out from his body and covered his whole body. At the same time, his figure flashed and flew in front of Xia Jingyu. Jingyu, be careful. The vitality is too strong. If you absorb too much, you will explode and die, right? After all, this is the fate-altering elixir, a divine elixir passed down from the ancient world. When faced with it, it is comparable to a poison that pierces the intestines. Xia Jingyu was surprisingly calm. At that moment, the black iron box had yet to be opened, but she already knew what was in the box and accurately explained its origin. Suyu was surprised. The current Xia Jingyu gave him a strange feeling. The iron box opened slowly, revealing 2 exquisite jade pagodas. Inside the pagodas, there was a 9-colored round pearl enshrined in each of the pagodas. At first glance, they looked like spiritual objects of the universe. It was this object that was emitting a terrifying vitality. Whoosh! Xia Jingyu's palm sucked in the air, and one of the jade pagodas was sucked into her sleeve. She calmly said, "If a dead person consumes this elixir, they will come back to life. If a living person consumes it, they will die on the spot. Rise. Die. Return. Life." Suyu's eyes were filled with shock. Was there really an elixir in the world that could bring the dead back to life? Looking at the heaven-defying vitality in the garden, Suyu's heart was somewhat convinced. "Keep it. You might have a use for it in the future," Xia Jingyu calmly said. Suyu nodded and kept it in the 9-jade spiritual pearl. Looking at the unfamiliar Xia Jingyu, Suyu opened his mouth slightly, as if he wanted to say something. However, Xia Jingyu spoke first. "Suyu, do you love me?" Xia Jingyu suddenly turned her head, and her cold expression melted. Her eyes were filled with expectation. Suyu was silent for a moment, then nodded. "Yes." A smile blossomed on her beautiful face, and it was filled with joy. Xia Jingyu seemed to have been released, and she threw herself into Su Yu's embrace. Her voice was filled with surprise, and it was trembling with joy. I knew that brother Su Yu only has me in your heart. Since that is the case, brother Su Yu, marry me. I am the one you love, not Qin Xianer. I, Xia Jingyu, am your bride in this world. Feeling Xia Jingyu's tears of joy, Su Yu felt even colder. He extended his arms and slowly pushed Xia Jingyu away from his embrace. Su Yu's expression was calm, but firm. I am sorry, Jingyu, but I cannot marry you. Xia Jingyu's smile stiffened. The mist in her eyes was still swirling, accumulating and accumulating. Why? She cried, not because she was happy, but because she was sad and heartbroken. She clutched her chest and looked straight at Su Yu. Tell me why. I was the one who met you first. I was the one who went through thick and thin with you. I was the one who gave you everything. It was me. Why is it Qin Xianer in the end? Her voice was filled with hysteria, and it was filled with an outburst that had been suppressed for a long time. For Su Yu, she had pointed her sword at the Holy King. For Su Yu, she had used her own eyes to see the rise and fall of the real dragon in his place. For Su Yu, she was willing to give herself to the Central Prefecture's king in exchange for his life. For Su Yu, she was willing to give up her life and bear all kinds of grievances. Her heart was always filled with Su Yu's shadow, and there was no room for anyone else. However, in the end, when she woke up, she received the news that Su Yu was going to marry Qin Xianer. How cruel and heartless was that! Su Yu's heart was in pain. What was supposed to happen had finally happened. When he chose Qin Xianer, this day had come. Because I owe her a promise, Su Yu said. Xia Jingyu shook her head, and her tears finally flowed down her cheeks. Her beautiful, clear eyes were filled with a burning light. What about me? Apart from you, I have nothing else. I only have you. Her heart-wrenching cries reached Su Yu's heart and tore it apart. I owe you a lifetime. Su Yu closed his eyes and turned around slowly. He was determined not to look at her again. However, when he turned around, tears fell from the corners of his eyes. Looking at Su Yu's back as he left, Xia Jingyu wiped the tears from the corners of her eyes. Her gentle eyes were filled with madness. Su Yu, I hate you. I, Xia Jingyu, swear that I will make you regret it. A chilling cry, filled with hatred, echoed in the courtyard. Su Yu's whole body trembled. It was as if his heart had been hollowed out, and he had completely lost something. He would never see the beautiful figure who had pulled out her sword for him, shed tears for him, and risked everything for him. The fate between them had been severed. Jingyu, I am sorry. I owe Xianer a promise, so I married her. The reason why I did not marry you was because I wanted to compensate you in another way. Su Yu left the courtyard. Behind him was a garden full of pear blossoms, which were as white as spring. 10 days later, the whole world was shocked. That day was the focus of the whole world. The Heavenly Law Alliance's master, a legendary figure, was getting married. Many people came to the dragon abyss of the 9 underworlds to congratulate him. All of the world's faction leaders were invited to attend. All of a sudden, all of the world's strongest people were gathered there. From the North Continent's 3 great super-factions to the Lucian faction, all of them were invited. The number of people gathered at the dragon abyss of the 9 underworlds exceeded several 100,000 in just 10 days. Old Chen was excited as he looked down from the Heavenly Law Alliance's palace. All the heroes in the world, as long as they had a name, were invited. I didn't expect that the Heavenly Law Alliance would have such a prosperous day. I'm afraid that even the First World Senior wasn't able to achieve this. But why did the Alliance Master, who has always kept a low profile, invite so many people? Old Chen still had doubts in his heart. At that moment it was noon. Old Chen's heart trembled. The auspicious hour had arrived. Guests, please enter the banquet. Old Chen activated the vital energy in his body and shouted loudly. At that moment, his voice traveled thousands of miles. Above the sea, thousands of miles of islands were laid out, and thousands of banquets were arranged neatly. At a glance, it was extremely majestic. Such extravagance was unprecedented, but no one dared to comment. That was because he was Suyu, the continent's greatest king. His wedding is indeed different from the rest. It was unknown whether it was sarcasm or self-mockery. At a table of banquets, a proud figure sat quietly. Her expression was cold, and her beautiful eyes were filled with complicated emotions. Wooer, at this moment, you cannot speak nonsense. Beside him was a dignified, elegant, and beautiful figure. Her eyes were dim, but she forced herself to stay alert. We only need our blessings. Wu bit her red lips and drank a mouthful of wine gloomily. And Yuro and Wu, the two people who avoided Suyu, actually appeared at his wedding. The world's greatest person, who was once a fellow disciple, would be proud of this. Ji Hongxue was also at the table, and she laughed lightly. She felt that fate was making fools of them. Yes, all of the people here are famous strong people. Even small factions like us were invited. If we were not in the same faction, I'm afraid that we would not have a place here. Chan Yufei blinked her beautiful eyes, and her heart was filled with emotions. She recalled all of her experiences with Suyu, and her feelings were also complicated. Chapter 706. The 2015 Elimination of Pornography and Illegal Publications campaign is in progress. The Yuewan Group will actively cooperate with the relevant departments to submit information. Authors, please be vigilant when writing. Don't let Chan Yufei look sideways. Sitting at the same table was a woman with a slightly noble aura. She sat prettily, and her snow-white skin was slightly bashful. Princess Yunyan, Li Hao's fiancée. I didn't expect her to come. Chan Yufei had a strange look. Everyone in the Lucien faction knew about what had happened between the two of them. Li Hao had failed to frame Suyu and caused Yunyan to marry Suyu. They had become a joke in the faction. It is said that Yunyan avoided Suyu and stayed in her family. This time, she must have been forced by her family to come. Ji Hongxue smiled playfully. Chan Yufei nodded and looked around. It seems that Suyu's acquaintances are all here. Even the ordinary people were invited. Your disciple's father is also here. At a glance, it was Ji Hongxue's last disciple, Li Jun. He was only 10 years old and sat quietly beside a middle-aged man in a yellow robe. Father, the legend of the continent is really an old friend of yours. Li Jun stood respectfully behind a middle-aged emperor. His face was full of shock and glory. Deep in the world of cultivation, he understood the meaning of Suyu better than his father. Suyu was the peak of the martial path, an almost legendary existence. He knew very well what an honor it was to be invited this time. Brother Su, do you still remember me, the third prince? The yellow-robed man was the third prince. Congratulations, old friend. At a table not far from them, Zidonglai was a little depressed and sighed. Haha, sometimes it will happen. Housemaster, why are you so stubborn? Xiang'er's destiny is in her own hands. Lin Yunhe smiled and comforted him. Zidonglai sighed and looked at Ziyunxiang, who was silent beside him. He felt helpless. Father, I'm fine. Ziyunxiang smiled slightly, but her smile was very forced. Anyone could see that she had a lot on her mind. The table behind them attracted a lot of attention because it was filled with astonishingly beautiful women. All of them were outstanding beauties. In the mainland, only the Phoenix Cabinet could have such a lineup. Pavilion Master, it doesn't feel good in your heart, right? Fairy Feng had a smile that was not a smile. She lowered her voice. The Phoenix Cabinet's master pretended to be calm. The fate between him and me ends here. There's nothing more to say. As for you, don't you feel the same way? Fairy Feng was startled. Her smile faded and she remained silent. After a long time, she faintly sighed. After 10 minutes, all the guests were seated. Let the bride and groom enter, Elder Chen shouted. The crowd was in an uproar, and their eyes shot toward the top of the palace. In an instant, colorful ribbons filled the sky and firecrackers filled the sky. Amidst the riot of colors, two fiery red figures walked out of the palace together. The man was dressed in a loose red robe. His silver hair fluttered in the wind, and he was in high spirits. He looked like an immortal who had descended to the mortal world. The woman wore a phoenix cloak with a jade hairpin and a phoenix crown on her head. Her immortal clothes fluttered in the wind. She was extremely beautiful. A pair of golden boy and jade girl floated in front of the 10,000 seat. With their backs facing the sky full of colorful ribbons, the two of them descended like immortals. The scene was magnificent to the extreme. So beautiful! Someone in the crowd couldn't help but exclaim. The people were beautiful, the scenery was beautiful, and the atmosphere was even more beautiful. Thank you, everyone, for coming all the way here to attend my wedding. I am extremely grateful. Suyu bowed toward the 100,000 people from afar. Congratulations, Alliance Master Su. The crowd was in an uproar, and they all came forward to greet him. From Shenyue Island to the Lucien faction, then to the 100 Territories Alliance, and finally to the entire continent, countless old friends congratulated him. Alliance Master Su, congratulations! In the crowd, the great lord from the Empire of Darkness also stood up to congratulate him. After the battle at the Dragon Abyss of the 9 Underworlds, the great lord had let go of all his previous grudges. He was filled with gratitude and respect from the bottom of his heart. The 100,000 congratulatory voices shook the sky. Suyu smiled and looked back at Qin Xiener, who was beside him. Xiener, are you satisfied with the 100,000 congratulatory voices and the whole world witnessing it? Xiener's small hand held Suyu's hand tightly, showing her nervousness. When she heard that, her face turned red, and her eyes became misty. Her voice was slightly choked. Yes, it's like a dream. I am finally going to be Brother Suyu's bride. I am so happy. Unknowingly, her voice was choked with sobs. Tears rolled down her cheeks and fell on the back of Suyu's hand. Feeling the warmth of her tears, Suyu unknowingly held her hand tightly. Xiener, don't worry. Today, I will give you a wedding that you will never forget, Suyu said softly. Old Chen was gratified and excited. Let the wedding begin. First, bow to your parents. As his voice fell, countless guests looked at each other. Normally, the wedding ceremony was a bow to the heavens and earth. The heavens and earth were the most important, followed by the parents, and finally, the couple bowed to each other. Suyu's wedding ceremony had skipped the bow to the heavens and earth. He didn't bow to the heavens and earth. This action caused the guests to murmur endlessly. As expected of Alliance Master Su, he doesn't bow to the heavens and earth, nor does he respect ghosts and gods. Even if he doesn't bow to the heavens and earth, it's nothing much. But to dare to do so, he is really unique. Only those who knew Suyu's past understood what he meant. He had always defied the heavens and went against fate. Why would he bow to the heavens and earth? No matter how many times he rose, or how he forcefully formed the pure divine decree, he had never bowed to the heavens. Why would he, who despised the heavens and earth, kneel to the heavens and earth? Everyone smiled and looked at Suyu silently. He was holding his wedding ceremony. Suyu's expression was calm. He held Xiener's small hand and bowed to the Duke of Xianyu, who was sitting high up. However, at the moment when he bowed, a clap of thunder resounded in the clear sky. At the same time, a strong wind blew and the clouds rose. The blue sky was quickly filled with dark clouds. The whole dragon abyss of the 9 underworlds was quickly enveloped by the dark clouds, and the surroundings were pitch black. The sudden appearance of the demonic phenomenon caused the guests' expressions to change abruptly. What happened? The Phoenix Cabinet's master looked at the sky in surprise, extremely puzzled. A similar scene had only appeared half a year ago, when the terrifying aura had descended upon the Zhenlong continent. The originally joyous and harmonious atmosphere was suddenly swept away. Countless people were shocked and could not sit still. Elder Gio slowly stood up from his seat. His old face was replaced by a grave expression, and his eyes were filled with fear as he looked above him. There was even a trace of fear in his voice. On the stage, Siener's body trembled. Her small body trembled under the inexplicable pressure, and she unknowingly leaned towards Suyu. Suyu held Siener's small hand and looked calmly at the demonic sky, which was filled with dark clouds. Is it finally here? I haven't seen it for a long time. Heaven's might. Suyu's eyes were filled with calmness, as if he had long expected such a scene to occur. The sky rumbled, and lightning gradually appeared. The deafening thunder shook everyone's eardrums. All of a sudden, the dark clouds above Suyu's head started rotating rapidly, forming a giant rotating cloud. When one looked up, it seemed as if a gap had appeared in the sky. It was extremely shocking. From the vortex, an aura that caused people's hearts to tremble gradually enveloped the area. Tie the knot, bow to the heavens and earth. The illusory voice was loud and clear, and it filled the entire area. Although they could clearly hear it, they felt as if it was not a voice, but a voice that reverberated in the depths of their souls. The crowd was shocked. The heavens and earth were speaking? Suyu wanted to go through the wedding ceremony, but he had to bow to the heavens and earth first? Elder Gio's expression was grave, and he looked at the vortex in shock. His pupils contracted, as if he had discovered something. His face trembled with fear. Suyu's gaze was calm. I don't need the heavens and earth to witness my wedding. I don't need the heavens and earth's approval. You should get lost as far away as you can. After he spoke, he held Siener's small hand and said gently, Siener, let's continue. Feeling the power in Suyu's hand, the frightened Siener's heart suddenly calmed down. She held Suyu's hand and kowtowed to him. Although the Duke of Xianyu was shocked by the strange phenomenon in the sky, he was extremely calm and accepted it. Kowtow. Elder Chen's body trembled in fear, but he still forced himself to remain calm. Suyu and Siener kowtowed as they heard him. Rumble. All of a sudden, thunderous roars filled with boundless anger could be heard. Hundreds of thunderbolts streaked across the sky and illuminated the world. Above the sea, huge waves surged continuously, and the sound was extremely shocking. Bang! Hundreds of thunderbolts, which seemed like they could destroy the world, fell at the same time and bombarded Suyu and Siener. Those who defy the heavens should be killed. The illusory voice sounded again, and it was filled with the heavens' might. Each of the hundreds of thunderbolts gave everyone a feeling of destruction. Even a level 1 fairy would be turned into ashes in an instant. Compared to the disastrous thunder, this thunderbolt was even more frightening. Alliance Master! The Annihilation team shouted in shock. They wanted to help, but how could they be in time to fight against the thunderbolts? However, Suyu did not even lift his head. With his back facing the destructive thunderbolts, he casually waved a 5-colored armor from his sleeves. Within the armor, hundreds of thunderbolts roared angrily, and the thunderbolts that were sweeping toward them suddenly expanded. In an instant, the violent sound of mountains collapsing and the earth cracking could be heard. The resulting shock waves set off boundless huge waves that swept across the Dragon Abyss Island. The sea roared wildly, and huge waves that were 1,000 feet high were crashing toward the banquet. Formation rise. Seeing that the guests were about to be blown away, suddenly, under the sea of the banquet, an intense light was emitted. A huge, yellowish light screen appeared, forming a semicircle. From top to bottom, it covered the banquet, protecting them. The strong air current rushed over, and the huge light screen trembled violently, but it did not break. The Phoenix Cabinet's protective formation? Someone in the crowd said in surprise. No, it's somewhat similar, but its power is even more shocking. I'm afraid that even a level 5 fairy would not be able to blast it open. Elder Gio was extremely shocked. Who could have taught him how to create such a powerful formation? This person was definitely not someone from Zhenlong. The Phoenix Cabinet's master widened her eyes in shock. Fairy Feng said in surprise, half a year ago, before Su Yu went into seclusion, he borrowed the blueprint of the Phoenix Cabinet's protective formation. Could it be that he had predicted that today's crisis would occur? Looking at the composed Su Yu on the stage, the crowd suddenly felt that Su Yu did not bow to the heavens on purpose. It was because he had already predicted this. Second bow, Elder Chen continued. Su Yu and Qin Xianer kowtowed for the second time. At that moment, hundreds of thunderbolts rolled down from the sky again. However, they were easily neutralized by the thousands of disastrous thunderbolts accumulated in the Thunder Herb armor. Third bow. Finally, Su Yu and Qin Xianer kowtowed 3 times, completing their bow to the Duke of Xianyu. Husband and wife bow to each other. The last bow was a bow between husband and wife. With this bow, they were officially husband and wife. Su Yu pulled Xianer up. Amidst the thunderbolts, he looked into Xianer's eyes. Xianer. Qin Xianer's face was filled with shyness, excitement, and joy. Chapter 707. The 2015 Elimination of Pornography and Illegal Publications campaign is currently in progress, and the Yuewen Group will cooperate with the relevant departments to submit the information. Authors, please be careful when writing. Those who go against the will of the heavens will be punished by the heavens. The heavens once again emitted a shocking and indifferent voice. At this moment, the lightning disappeared. However, an aura that made people tremble suddenly erupted from the vortex. Under the shocked gazes of the crowd, an ancient tower slowly descended from the vortex. The ancient tower was filled with a terrifying pressure, and all living beings felt as if they were being suppressed by it, causing them to feel restless. At the top of the ancient tower, a blurry figure of a youth was sitting cross-legged. Beside him was a mysterious and unfathomable ancient sword. The ancient sword contained a peerless murderous aura, as if it wanted to exterminate all living beings. Just looking at it would cause one's heart to beat wildly, as if it was about to shatter. Such a scene caused the pupils of the Phoenix Cabinet's master to shrink. During the Phoenix meet, when Su Yu had gone against the will of the heavens to form the pure divine decree, this ancient tower had descended to obstruct him. Now it had descended once again. It symbolized the heavens, the earth, and the will of the heavens that ruled all living beings. If the heavens wanted someone to die, that person had to die. The will of the heavens ruled over everything. Destroy! A green light pillar suddenly shot out from the giant tower. The light pillar was filled with an aura that could exterminate all living beings. The light pillar enveloped not only Su Yu, but also the entire dragon abyss of the 9 underworlds. Upon seeing this, Elder Jio's expression changed. Everyone, leave the island. It's dangerous. Elder Jiu felt a great threat from the light pillar. However, the light pillar was extremely fast, so how could the people on the island retreat? Enter the palace. Suddenly, Su Yu waved his right arm, and a green light flickered in his hand as a beautiful figure appeared. It was Wu Aoyue, who had a cold expression on her face. Wu Aoyue had a calm expression as she commanded 10,000 people to enter the Heavenly Law Alliance Palace. At the same time, she quickly crushed a jade pendant. Along with a cracking sound, another giant light screen enveloped the entire Heavenly Law Alliance Palace. At this moment, the light pillar shot down with a rumble. The terrifying light pillar contained the will of the heavens, which could exterminate all living beings. Everything that was enveloped by the light pillar melted like snowflakes. The birds that did not have enough time to fly away turned into nothingness like smoke. The giant stones melted like snowflakes. This was an erasure of existence. When the beam of light swept past, a scene that made everyone at the banquet gasp appeared. The dragon abyss of 9 underworlds, which had existed for 10,000 years, was completely wiped out. Nothing was left. Such a terrifying destructive aura. Even a divine master wouldn't be able to come out unscathed. Shock appeared in Elder Jio's eyes, and his expression became grave. If he were to enter the light of world annihilation, he would definitely not be able to survive with his current cultivation. However, what made his pupils constrict was that a light screen was floating on the island where the dragon abyss of 9 underworlds had disappeared. The Heavenly Law Alliance's palace, which was still intact, was displayed on the screen. The person inside was not injured at all. In fact, Su Yu and Qin Xianer still maintained their bowing posture. It was as if the destructive beam of light had no effect on him at all. Su Yu and Qin Xianer raised their heads and bowed. "The ceremony is complete," Elder Chen shouted. With this shout, Su Yu and Qin Xianer officially became husband and wife. After 8 years, they had finally consummated their marriage. Amidst the sky full of lightning, the wrath of the heavens, and the world-destroying divine light, they defied the heavens to get married. "Brother Su Yu." Xianer's eyes were filled with excitement as she leaned into Su Yu's embrace. Her delicate body trembled slightly as she said, "I'm not dreaming." Su Yu smiled gently as he hugged her. He then looked at the crowd with a smile. "Thank you all for witnessing my wedding with Xianer," Su Yu said in a loud voice. "Now I ask all of you to retreat for the time being. I will face all of this alone." Rumble. All of a sudden, the sea below the palace, where the dragon abyss of 9 underworlds used to be, was split in two, revealing a deep and serene cave at the bottom of the sea. Elder Jiu was startled by this, and he exclaimed in surprise, "The dragon abyss of 9 underworlds?" The dragon abyss of 9 underworlds was inside of it. The magma that filled it had already cooled down half a year ago. At the same time, when it was opened, a shocking amount of spiritual energy rushed out of it. It was 10 times denser than the outside world, and it was comparable to the Empire of Darkness's land, which had been accumulating for 10,000 years. If one observed it carefully, they would discover that it was filled with countless spiritual treasures and rich resources. It was enough for 100,000 people here to live for several hundred years. Elder Jiu was even more shocked by such a sight. All of this had been prepared by Su Yu in advance. The crowd was in an uproar, and they all entered the dragon abyss of 9 underworlds to avoid the terrifying heavenly wrath in the sky. After a short while, 100,000 people left. However, there were still a few people who did not leave. "Alliance Master, the Annihilation Team is with you." Luo Xiong led the Annihilation Team and followed closely behind Su Yu. Elder Jiu also stood beside Su Yu and did not leave. There were also the Great Lord, the Phoenix Cabinet's Master, and Ji Hongshu. All of them stood beside Su Yu and looked up at the tall tower, which was emitting the heavenly wrath. Su Yu looked around. He saw fear on their faces, but he also saw determination. Su Yu felt relieved and smiled calmly. "I am very happy that all of you are willing to do this. However, this is a battle that belongs to me, so all of you should enter the dragon abyss immediately. I will seal the dragon abyss of 9 underworlds in a while, and the outside world will not be able to break in. This way, even if the continent is destroyed, all of you will still be able to survive." Elder Jiu could not hide his confusion. "Lad, what are you planning?" Su Yu replied, "I had an ominous premonition before the battle in the dragon abyss of 9 underworlds. I assumed that the Blood Emperor would disappear after he retreated. However, in the past 6 months, it has been increasing day by day. This is why I knew that everything was not over yet, and that the true disaster had yet to befall us. Hence, I have been secretly preparing for it for half a year." He then added, "All of the resources stored in the dragon abyss of 9 underworlds are enough for all of the world's experts, people with outstanding aptitudes, and people who are most precious to me, to use for several hundred years. Today, I took advantage of my wedding to gather all of you here. I hoped that all of you would witness my wedding with Xianer, and I also wanted to protect all of you." He then added, "I can't protect the whole continent, but I can only protect all of you." All of the people were shocked. He had started planning for it half a year ago? Moreover, just as he had expected, the world's will had appeared. Then, what is the matter with these formations? Elder Gio was surprised. These powerful formations were quite extraordinary. I have to thank the third Saint Master. I got a secret book on formations from him, and it was you, who helped me set them up. Su Yu pointed at Wu Aoyue, who was standing behind him quietly. Wu Aoyue was very experienced, and she knew a little about formations. In the past 6 months, she had tried her best to comprehend several of them. Moreover, Su Yu had plentiful materials, so he had managed to set up 2 great formations in half a year. Upon hearing this, Elder Gio was left speechless. There's no time to lose. All of you should go inside. I will face them alone, Su Yu urged. As he looked at the tower, his gaze became ice-cold. The enemy is too strong, and none of you can help me. Instead, you will become a burden to me. So, all of you should leave. Don't waste my efforts. Su Yu had been preparing for half a year just to protect them. All of them were hesitant, but in the end, under Su Yu's urging, they all entered the tower. Even Elder Gio entered the tower. In the end, only one person held Su Yu's hand and refused to leave. Siener, I don't want you to suffer any harm. So you should also go, Su Yu said. Siener shook her head while no fear appeared on her face. Instead, a bright smile appeared on her face as she held Su Yu's hand even tighter. I will hold your hand and grow old with you. If you die, I won't live on alone. Su Yu revealed a gratified smile. Okay. As he spoke, he hugged her. Siener felt gratified and she clenched her fists, while determination appeared in her eyes. However, all of a sudden, she felt a pain in her neck, while her head became dizzy. Before she fainted, she understood what Su Yu meant. Brother Su Yu, I'm sorry, Siener, but I will face them alone. Su Yu carried the unconscious Siener to the dragon abyss and handed her over to Wu Aoyue. Protect her. Wu Aoyue nodded and looked deeply at Su Yu. You should also be careful. Su Yu nodded and flew into the sky. As he clenched his fist, numerous golden leaves flew out of his sleeves and covered the entrance of the dragon abyss. Elder Gio was slightly confused at first, but his face turned pale with fright. The leaves of the heavenly orchid silver bamboo? The heavenly orchid silver bamboo was Jojo's #1 divine bamboo, and he knew about it well. However, it was precisely because he knew about its preciousness that he was shocked by it. Su Yu unexpectedly possessed such a divine object, which all creation old monsters yearned for, but couldn't get. Judging from the large number of leaves, Su Yu must have possessed a large amount of divine bamboo. This lad really hid his strength well. Elder Gio was shocked beyond words, as Su Yu was always able to surprise him again and again. The world's #1 divine bamboo is such a hard object, and even if a divine master came here personally, he wouldn't be able to break the seal. This was the key object that would protect them for eternity. Unless someone opened it from the inside, no external force would be able to break it. After Su Yu had done all of this, he didn't have to worry about anything else. As long as the people inside didn't act foolishly and open the seal themselves, the outside world wouldn't be able to do anything to them. At this moment, Su Yu raised his head and looked at the tower with a cold glint in his eyes. I have been waiting for you for a long time. Isn't it time to settle our debt once and for all, great Saint Master? Su Yu's words were shocking. Although the dragon abyss was sealed, it was still possible to see what was happening outside. When the people in the dragon abyss heard this, they all fell silent. The great Saint Master? The most mysterious commander of the Black Shadow Guards in the otherworldly army? He is actually the sword-wielding youth who represents the will of heaven? Elder Gio's eyes were filled with disbelief. How is this possible? This tower has always existed, so how could it be the great Saint Master? He had appeared at the Phoenix meet in the past. If he was the great Saint Master, didn't that mean that he had been in the Zhenlong continent before the otherworldly army invaded? If that was the case, why hadn't he appeared yet? What was even more unbelievable was that the great Saint Master was the representative of heaven's might, who was in charge of all lives. This was absolutely impossible. You dare to defy the will of heaven and earth. You should be killed. The youth looked at Elder Gio. Although his lips didn't open, he still spoke sharply. The heavenly might contained within his words rumbled loudly. Suyu stood at the peak of the palace and looked at the sky. Represent the will of heaven and earth? These words can deceive thousands of people, but they can't deceive my eyes. Back then, when I formed the pure divine decree, I used the will of defying to obtain the true will. Although my eyes were injured after a short while, it was enough for me to see your true face. Suyu's eyes were filled with disdain. The will of heaven you speak of is not the will of heaven and earth, but the return. True. God. Will. You are the same as me, a martial artist who can form the pure divine decree that emits the will of heaven. You are just an ordinary person. Suyu revealed the truth. Suyu's heavenly eyes represented the punishment of heaven and sent down the will of heaven. The sword-wielding youth, who was the so-called representative of heaven and earth, was the same. Like Suyu, he was an ordinary person, not a god. Don't you dare! The sword-wielding youth spoke sharply again. However, before he could finish speaking, he was interrupted by Suyu's thunderous voice. Stop pretending. You are just a character that the Central Prefecture's king placed in the Zhenlong continent to prevent the Zhenlong continent from producing strong martial artists. Hence, when the Zhenlong continent breaks through to the fairy realm, the tribulation that they have to go through is usually very frightening. In fact, it is many times more frightening than the tribulation of the fairy realm in Jiuzhou. Anyone who goes through the tribulation has no chance of surviving. When Elder Jiu and the people of the Heavenly Law Alliance went through their tribulations, after the 3 normal tribulations, an extremely frightening golden tribulations would appear and kill them. Hence, it could be seen that the last tribulations was done on purpose. This person was the youth who was pretending to be the will of heaven. The will of heaven is not to be trifled with. The youth said indifferently. The light of destruction gathered in the tower once again. Chapter 708. The 2015 campaign to eliminate pornography and illegal publications is in progress. Yuewen Group will actively cooperate with the relevant departments and submit information. Authors, please be vigilant when writing. Do not violate the rules. He raised his hand and tapped on the thunder herb armor floating above his head. The lightning that had been accumulating for a long time completely exploded. There were more than 800 thunderbolts, colorful and dazzling. Among them were tribulation thunders and hundreds of strange golden tribulation thunders. Ordinary tribulation thunder would appear when one was going through the tribulation to become a celestial. However, the golden tribulation thunder that appeared at the end was the thunder that deliberately erased their existence. Have a taste of your own thunder. As Suyu shouted coldly, 800 thunderbolts roared like thunder dragons, roaring through the clouds. From the ground, they engulfed the vortex in the sky with a rumble. Such a shocking scene was like the end of the world, shaking everyone's hearts. At this moment, the sea, the continent, the north, south, east, and west were all affected by the dense thunder. Even the farthest eastern continent could sense the thunder coming from the sea abyss. For a time, the entire continent fell into an inexplicable panic. At the top of the ancient tower, the young man's indifferent expression changed for the first time as he frowned slightly. Such a strange thunder herb armor seemed to be somewhat unexpected. After all, the thunder herb was only used to resist thunderbolts. However, the thunder herb in Suyu's palm could directly absorb the disastrous thunderbolts and turn them into its own. The most important thing was that Suyu had mastered quite a few thunder herbs. At this moment, the ancient pagoda rumbled. World-destroying light descended, dazzling the world. The hundreds of lightning bolts and the light of the ancient pagoda, both containing the power to destroy the heavens and the earth, collided at this moment. Bang! It was as if the primal chaos had just been born, and the heavens and earth had been split into two, erupting with a deafening sound that shook the heavens and earth. The sound waves contained in the sound were filled with destructive power, and they spread out in all directions. With the dragon abyss of 9 underworlds as the center, the water of the sea flowed in all directions. Boundless tsunamis swept across the continent, drowning the ancient lands. In the northern continent, countless mountains were submerged by the roaring sea. The Lucian faction, the Wulong Snowfield, the 100 Territories Alliance, and the Phoenix Cabinet were all swallowed up by the sea and sank to the bottom of the sea. The powerful tsunami pushed the entire continent several thousand kilometers away. The northern continent had been completely wiped out. Countless living beings in the northern continent were wiped out on the spot. As for the rest of the continent, mountains collapsed, volcanoes erupted, and cities were reduced to ruins in the prehistoric earthquake. The calamity that descended in an instant caused the people of the continent to fall into fear. Shouts, cries of panic, and screams filled the world. Under the dragon abyss, they, who had witnessed this unprecedented collision, were already unable to use any words to express the shock in their hearts. How was this a battle? This was clearly the destruction of the world. When the shock wave slowly dissipated, the situation on the field became clear. Su Yu stood at his original spot, completely unharmed. In the sky, the dense dark clouds that had gathered had long been reduced to dust by the world-ending collision. All that was left was the lonely ancient pagoda floating in the void, and the young man on top of the ancient pagoda. Within the terrifying lightning, the ancient pagoda actually still remained. However, it was in extremely bad condition, signs of collapse everywhere. Pieces of broken bricks peeled off and fell into the sea. It was clear who had the upper hand in the collision just now. The tribulation lightning that gathered 100 people was even more terrifying. Even an almighty divine master might not dare to easily block it, so it was not strange for the ancient pagoda to end up like this. The slightly strange thing was that although the ancient pagoda was extremely damaged, the destructive aura emitted from it did not weaken at all. It was extremely strange. Although the young man on top of the ancient pagoda was in good condition, his eyes were burning with anger. He no longer had the indifference of looking down on the common people. Su Yu. The young man's murderous intent was obvious. Su Yu's lips curled into a mocking smile. Why? Are you no longer pretending to be the heavens? A mere mortal like you wants to rule the world like the will of the heavens? Ridiculous! What a joke! The young man was furious, and he could no longer pretend. Back then, I should have killed you at all costs. The young man looked at him coldly. Logically speaking, since he was in the Zhenlong, he clearly had countless opportunities to attack. However, he never showed himself. He only showed himself when people were undergoing tribulations, or when he went against the heavens. It could be seen that he was afraid of something, or that there was some kind of restriction on him that could not be easily broken. Otherwise, Su Yu would not have survived until now. You can try now. Su Yu put away the dull thunder herb armor and stood with his hands behind his back. If you have any abilities, just show me. The young man squinted his eyes and stood at the top of the ancient pagoda. He did not leave the ancient pagoda easily. Su Yu, if you want to die, don't be impatient. It will be your turn later. I will find the other person first. The young man suppressed his murderous intent and stated his purpose for showing himself. It seemed that suppressing Su Yu was just something he did in passing. He had another purpose for showing up. Shin-Chen, do you still need to hide? Since I have shown myself, it means that everything is over. Even if you continue to hide, it will be of no use. The young man shouted as he looked around. His shout reverberated in every corner of the Zhenlong world. Shin-Chen? Who? Could it be that the otherworldly people had invaded the Zhenlong world because of this person? Why had he never heard of this person before? His shout reverberated in the world, but there was no response. The young man's eyes shone with a cold light. After 3 years of probing, we can confirm that you have fallen from the divine altar to an ordinary martial artist. This is an ultimatum for you. I will give you 3 breaths time. If you do not show yourself, we will kill all of Zhenlong's living beings. Come out. The young man flew up into the air, and the ancient pagoda beneath his feet started to vibrate vigorously. The ancient pagoda, which was already full of cracks, started to fall into pieces amidst the vibrations. It quickly fell apart and completely disintegrated. Did he just destroy the ancient pagoda? The people in the dragon abyss were confused. However, they knew that this person, who called himself the Saint Master, was not a fool. Something even more terrifying must have happened. As expected, the ancient pagoda fell apart. However, a transparent pagoda, which was as tall as a human, gradually appeared from within. It was the pagoda. It emitted a destructive aura. Elder Jiao, who was in the dragon abyss, was shocked. Impossible! How could this object appear in the hands of the Central Prefecture's king? Could it be that he has already seized the throne of Jiuzhou? It is a top-grade fairy artifact, the Emperor Pagoda. It is a top-grade fairy artifact that can cross hundreds of millions of dimensions. Only the Jiuzhou emperors of each generation can use it. How could he have gotten it? Elder Jiao, who was shocked, gradually became desperate. It was as if he had just discovered something impossible. Su Yu used his soul eyes to scan the transparent pagoda, which was as tall as a human, at a glance. However, when he looked inside, his expression changed abruptly. His soul was extinguished by some kind of power. Interesting. There is such a talented soul in such a small, desolate land. It seems like he has already reached the 2nd level of his soul. A sinister laugh resounded from within the pagoda. Shortly after, the surface of the transparent pagoda started to distort, forming a vortex that led to the interior of the pagoda. A figure, who was wearing a yellow robe, stepped out from within the vortex. The yellow robe was old, as if it had not been changed for dozens of years. An eerie chilly aura was emitted from the robe. The owner of the robe was a shriveled old man. His eyes were hollow and his eye sockets were sunken. 2 green ghostly flames flickered faintly. At first glance, he seemed like a ghost. Su Yu could not sense any vital energy fluctuation from his body. He could not even sense any life force. If he was not standing right in front of Su Yu, he would not have been able to discover his existence. As soon as he appeared, Su Yu's hair stood on end, and he felt a sense of crisis. An almighty divine master. Su Yu's pupils contracted to the size of needles. Chapter 709. Only an almighty divine master could feel such a pressure on one's soul. Su Yu had guessed that the great Saint Master wouldn't be the only one participating in this battle, and that there would probably be other fairies or even divine masters. He didn't expect that a divine master would really appear here. After meeting Lu Chui, Su Yu understood how terrifying a divine master was. A fairy couldn't contend against him. A divine master could decide the life and death of a fairy with a single thought. Even though Su Yu had many trump cards, he still wasn't sure that he could deal with a divine master. It was likely that he would be killed by a divine master before he could even use any of his trump cards. Su Yu's expression was calm, but his heart was tense, and his whole body was on guard. In the dragon abyss, Elder Jiao's face was filled with despair as he muttered a name. Bright Light Guard, Venerable Fu Guei. The Bright Light Guard was the most terrifying faction in the Central Prefecture. The Black Shadow Guard was led by the Great Saint Master. The Bright Light Guard was famous for its heaven-extinguishing divine palm. In the past, the Zhenlong continent had been destroyed by the heaven-extinguishing divine palm, and many of its flourishing cities had been destroyed by it. Even now, there were still countless palm imprints left in the Zhenlong continent. The yellow-robed man was several miles away from the dragon abyss, but he still heard Elder Jiao's exclamation. The green flames in his eye sockets flickered as he looked at the dragon abyss. It seemed like his gaze could penetrate the heavenly orchid silver bamboo and see what was happening inside. Jiu Yuanzhou, the former third bright light guard. A look of reverence appeared on his face. Then, he realized Elder Jiu's situation, and a mocking smile appeared at the corners of his mouth. The former famous bright light guard has become a coward, and you are protected by a junior. What a joke! His mockery made Elder Jiu clench his fists and clench his teeth as he said, "You helped the evildoer and slaughtered millions of lives. This is the natural cycle of karma, and you will all get what you deserve." In the past, he had refused to carry out orders, and he had been heavily injured by the Blood Emperor. The natural cycle of karma? The past bright light guard is now just a pitiful dog's bark. Venerable Fu Gui sneered coldly. "In the past, I had to address you respectfully as a lord, but now, you're just a stray dog in front of me. Isn't this a good feeling?" The harsh words made Elder Jiu feel humiliated, but there was nothing he could do. "You can continue to hide. When I find the Jiuzhou Emperor, I will personally send you to the afterlife." Venerable Fu Gui mocked him, then turned his gaze toward Su Yu, while a cold glint flickered in his eyes. "Lad, you are really interesting. I really can't understand why you have so many heavenly orchid silver bamboo leaves, as it's difficult to find even a single leaf in Jiuzhou." The heavenly orchid silver bamboo was the #1 divine bamboo in the world that had long been extinct in the 9 prefectures. Only a small number of them survived in the hands of some all creation's old monsters. They were watered with their blood essence day and night, and only then were they able to be reborn. He couldn't understand how a brat from a savage land like Zhenlong could obtain such a terrifying amount of heavenly orchid silver bamboo leaves. "It seems like I must capture you and properly interrogate you." Venerable Fu Gui squinted his eyes and emitted a cold glint. Su Yu's pupils turned serious, and he used his soul eyes to observe his surroundings. The hearts of all the people in the Dragon Abyss were on tenterhook. After all, how could Su Yu withstand the anger of a divine master? He would probably be reduced to ashes in an instant. As Su Yu looked at the person on the yellow runway, his gaze became ice-cold. Is that the case? It's still uncertain who will emerge victorious. He had never feared a battle, even if his enemy was an almighty divine master. "Don't bother with him. Leave this lad to me, while you quickly look for the Jiuzhou Emperor." The youth atop the ancient tower spoke. It seemed from his tone that he wasn't afraid of the almighty divine master in front of him. Upon hearing him, Venerable Fu Gui squinted his eyes as he looked at Su Yu. He then turned around and flew toward the continent. Who is this youth? How could the Black Shadow Guard's great Saint Master have the right to order an almighty divine master? As Su Yu examined the youth once again, he suddenly felt like this person was somewhat illusory and ethereal. Moreover, when he looked at him with his soul eyes, he found that his body seemed somewhat fleeting. It was at this moment that the ancient tower shook once again, and a powerful aura emanated from it once again. Moreover, it was several terrifying auras that could make one shudder. Level 9 Fairy. Su Yu's pupils contracted once again, as he felt an extremely powerful existence among those auras. Although it wasn't as suffocating as the almighty divine master, it was still extremely powerful. As Su Yu looked at it, he saw several people wearing different clothes coming out of the ancient tower. Every single one of them emitted a terrifying aura that could shake the continent. Even the weakest among them was at the level 7 fairy realm, which was comparable to the third Saint Master, who was proficient in the ice path. After a rough count, Su Yu discovered that there were 20 level 7 fairy realm people, 10 level 8 fairy realm people, and 1 extraordinary level 9 fairy realm person, who was half a step into the almighty divine master realm. The third Saint Master and his group of trash are really unreliable. In the end, we still have to deal with them. The level 9 fairy realm leader was a white-haired middle-aged man. His eyes had 2 strange blood-red veins, which emitted a dangerous aura. Any one of these 31 people possessed absolute power that could crush the entire Zhenlong continent. Even though the Heavenly Law Alliance had nurtured more than 100 early-stage fairies, they would still be slaughtered in front of these people. "Greetings, great Saint Master." After the white-haired, middle-aged man appeared, he immediately turned around and kowtowed to the youth. The people behind him also did the same. "Is this youth really the great Saint Master?" "Second Saint Master, you are in charge of taking people and occupying every corner of the continent. Then, you should cooperate with Venerable Fu Gui to look for the Jojo Emperor. Once you find him, you should immediately send a signal." The youth stood with his hands clasped behind his back as he commanded the second Saint Master. "Yes, sir." The second Saint Master received the order, then led the people behind him and rushed to every corner of the continent. In the end, only Su Yu and the youth were left. His gaze fell on Su Yu once again, and a cold expression appeared on his cold face. He then revealed a cold smile and said, "Su Yu, now that you are free, I will deal with you." As he spoke, he took a step out of the ancient tower. In an instant, the whole world rumbled, and furious thunder rumbled in the sky. The Emperor Tower's whole body shone brightly, then turned into the size of a palm and fell into the youth's palm. Compared to its previous exquisite appearance, the Emperor Tower seemed to have become much more turbid and weak. When Su Yu noticed this, he secretly observed it. "Su Yu, I can't help but admit that your luck is too great. In the past, a lad who had just condensed the pure divine decree could have easily killed you. However, the King of Darkness obstructed him, and I didn't expect that you would take advantage of that opportunity to reach your current state." The youth slowly walked over. What caused Su Yu's heart to become grave was that his aura would change with every step he took. From the initial level 5 fairy realm, he quickly advanced to the level 6 fairy realm. From the level 6 fairy realm, he quickly advanced to the level 7 fairy realm. With every step he took, he advanced to the next level. As his cultivation changed, his body started emitting a terrifying aura. It was an aura that seemed familiar to him. A familiar feeling welled up in Su Yu's heart. In an instant, a thought flickered in Su Yu's mind. "You are..." Chapter 710. The Mysterious Heavenly Divine Pavilion? Su Yu's heart trembled as the sense of familiarity became clearer. "It really is you." Su Yu's eyes were filled with coldness and hatred. Creak. The sound of silk ripping could be heard as the light on the youth's body distorted and flickered. Then, a layer of light was torn from the inside out. The ordinary-looking youth had taken on a completely new appearance. He was wearing a jade crown and a luxurious robe. His face was handsome, and his eyes were so sharp that they could see through everything in the world. How could Su Yu forget such a familiar face? Gu Taishu. Su Yu's words were cold. He was Lu Chuyi's fiancé, a genius of the 18 blessed and heavenly lands, a peak late-stage divine master expert. He was only a step away from becoming an all-creation expert. When he had descended upon the mysterious heavenly divine pavilion, he had almost killed Su Yu as a late-stage fairy. If Hong Luan's clone had not come and scared him away, Su Yu's fate would have been unknown. Su Yu had guessed the great Saint Master's identity many times, but he had never thought it would be Gu Taishu. No wonder the Pearl Scales blood centipede had an extra strand of real spirit blood in its body after it was stolen. Its power was comparable to a 9th-grade fairy. You, who refined the 9 fairy elixir, must have a lot of real spirit blood in your body. Su Yu's eyes shone with understanding. Gu Taishu was frantically collecting the blood of the 9 ancient real spirits to refine the 9 fairy elixir. He was trying to break through the all-creation realm. Using a strand of real spirit blood to modify the Pearl Scales blood centipede was a piece of cake. If I hadn't been afraid of the Jojo Emperor, do you think I would have let you live after you stole the Pearl Scales blood centipede? Gu Taishu's aura was still rising crazily. In the mysterious heavenly divine pavilion, Su Yu and Gu Taishu had become sworn enemies. Gu Taishu would never let Su Yu go if he had the chance. However, He was still in Jojo, yet he had not made a move. It was obvious that he was afraid. The one he was most afraid of was the mysterious Jojo Emperor. The otherworldly army had invaded for 3 years, and even the Blood Emperor had not made a move. This proved that the Jojo Emperor's cultivation was not even 1/10 of his original power. That was why Gu Taishu had dared to show himself. The only thing Su Yu found strange was that Gu Taishu had 2 identities at the same time. One was a student of the Purple Cloud Palace, and the other was a guard of the Central Prefecture's king. If he remembered correctly, the 18 blessed and heavenly lands did not have a harmonious relationship with the Central Prefecture. Now your luck has run out, and no one can save you anymore. Gu Taishu's rising cultivation gradually came to a stop, and it finally stopped at the level 9 fairy realm. How was the later stage of the fairy realm similar to the battle in the mysterious heavenly divine pavilion? In that battle, Su Yu had almost lost his life. Would the same thing happen again? Su Yu's expression was calm, and no panic could be seen in his eyes. It's this scene again. Our unfinished battle can come to an end today. Indeed, we can put a full stop to it. You are just a lowly existence who has survived until today by sheer luck. You, and I belong to 2 different worlds. Your futile attempt to cling to her has sealed your fate of death. Gu Taishu took a step forward. This step seemed to have descended from the heavens, exerting a great pressure on one's soul. The bodies of the second Saint Master and the others, who had not gone far, trembled as they looked back. Their eyes were filled with reverence. As expected of him, the heir of the Central Prefecture's king. He has comprehended the pure divine decree, which allowed him to transform into the heavens and suppress all heroes. How terrifying was that! Even a late-stage divine master at the same level as him would not be able to easily shake such a pressure. Replacing the heavens and becoming the new heavens. This was Gu Taishu's divine decree. How arrogant and presumptuous it was! The divine decree was the extreme embodiment of a person's will. This meant that Gu Taishu had subconsciously wanted to replace the heavens. His domineering and arrogant nature was evident from this. With the dragon abyss of the 9 underworlds as its loyalty, the surrounding ocean within a radius of 500 kilometers sunk, and the air exploded as it sank into extreme pressure. Su Yu himself also felt the pressure from both his soul and body. The protective vital energy on the surface of his body was instantly shattered, becoming as thin as a piece of paper. Under the astonishing pressure, the blood in his body flowed at an extremely fast speed, even bursting through his skin and spurting out from his pores like lines of blood. Cracking sounds could be heard coming from all the bones in his body, as if they were being crushed. Su Yu's soul was also trembling intensely, and an indescribable pain reverberated in the depths of his mind. Just a single step had put Su Yu in danger of destroying both his body and soul. His divine decree was so terrifying that it was terrifying. Destroy. Gu Taishu's eyes were ice-cold as he took another step forward. This step caused the world to rumble, and the bottom of the ocean was shattered, revealing countless giant cracks. The seawater within 1,000 miles was absorbed by the cracks, and 1,000 miles of dry land appeared in the boundless ocean. Su Yu's body was like an ordinary person's, and he was heavily injured. With a bang, he was pressed into the cracks. They were both grade 9 fairies, but the current Gu Taishu was much more terrifying than the clone in the mysterious heavenly divine pavilion. He was more than 10 times stronger. Even an early-stage almighty divine master might not be able to escape unscathed from such a strike. Seeing Su Yu, who was covered in blood, falling into the cracks of the ocean, Gu Taishu's eyes were ice-cold. "That's all you've got?" Then, his beautiful face twitched. He's not dead yet? His body is tougher than I thought. However, before he could finish his words, a faint sound of thunder came from above his head. Looking up, he saw a silver-haired figure stepping out of the white clouds in the boundless horizon of the sky. His clothes were neat and tidy and he looked calm. There was no trace of blood on his body. Is that so? Your insight seems to be very ordinary, unlike an almighty divine master. You didn't even notice that you destroyed a phantom clone. Are you really Gu Taishu? Suyu, who was standing in the clouds with his hands clasped behind his back, spoke calmly. However, when Gu Taishu heard it, it was extremely harsh. While the anger in his heart was rising, Gu Taishu's heart trembled slightly. When did he teleport? Why didn't I notice? Before he could figure it out, Suyu put down his hands behind his back and extended his right palm. His expression was solemn, and a hazy fluorescent light gradually condensed in his palm. I am Tyene, and my palm is like the bright moon, Suyu murmured softly, and the hazy light in his palm rapidly increased. Although it was the sun in the sky, and the sunlight was dazzling, it could not cover up the hazy light. Instead, it was being covered by the hazy light. The hazy light became stronger and stronger, and it enveloped Suyu. Finally, even the whole world was integrated into the dazzling brilliance. Even the 9 heavens' sun was covered. As far as the eye could see, the only thing left in the sky was the huge moon that spanned hundreds of miles, as well as the faintly discernible silhouettes within the bright moon. It was as if an immortal on the bright moon had returned on the moon. Heaven extinguishing palm? Gu Taishu's indifferent expression changed slightly. Did Zhu Yuanzhou hand over this celestial-level cultivation technique to you? But you actually succeeded. The heaven-extinguishing divine palm was a remnant of a celestial-level cultivation method, and only those with nature-defying comprehension could comprehend it. Even Gu Taishu had not fully comprehended it. However, Suyu had actually done it. Among the 10 great Radiance Guards, who had not spent dozens of years to successfully cultivate the heaven-extinguishing divine palm. But how long had Suyu been training? Gu Taishu's face darkened as he thought of the gift of the soul. It was said that the stronger one's soul was, the higher one's power of comprehension would be. The 10 bright light guards had souls that were far stronger than those of the same level. The killing intent in his eyes did not decrease, but increased. At this moment, the bright moon covered the sky and covered the sun. It was as if the stars were crashing down from the 9 heavens. Boom! With a deafening sound, the bright moon fell like Suyu's palm. The dried-up blue sea fiercely trembled. The second Saint Master and the others, who were thousands of miles away, turned their heads and their expressions changed. The first style of the heaven-extinguishing divine palm, the great moon palm? The second Saint Master was shocked, and his expression changed several times. He clenched his teeth and shouted, "Return immediately! The great Saint Master is in danger!" One of the fairies hesitated and said, "Second Saint Master, with the great Saint Master's power, he probably doesn't need our help." No. The second Saint Master's expression was grave. If the great Saint Master's real body, Gu Taishu, used his full power, we wouldn't even be able to defeat him. However, the great Saint Master is just a clone of Gu Taishu's real body. His cultivation isn't even a tenth of his real body's. If Suyu was here, he would be shocked by the youth's identity. He was Gu Taishu's clone. The youth's cultivation was powerful, and his body was so real that it was hard for Suyu to believe that he was just a clone. However, this was the only way to explain why there were 2 Gu Taixis in the Central Prefecture and the 18 Blessed and Heavenly Lands at the same time. I thought that even if it was just a clone, it would be more than enough to deal with this person. However, I didn't expect that this person would be proficient in the Bright Light Guard's ultimate technique. Moreover, he has even cultivated it to the great Saint Master's level. He's definitely not a simple person. We mustn't let our guard down. Let's return immediately and help the great Saint Master. The second Saint Master made a prompt decision. Thus, the 31 people turned around and returned. In the dried-up land, the moonlight that filled the sky dissipated, and the trembling ground gradually stopped. The gentle moonlight still lingered in the air, as well as the terrifying destructive power. In the sky above the dried-up land, where Gu Taishu was standing, his clothes were scorched in several places. His jade crown had fallen off, and his black hair was scattered all over. His handsome face was slightly pale, and it was filled with deep anger. A jade cat had shattered in his palm. This jade cat was a miraculous treasure that could replace death. Gu Taishu had used it once in the mysterious heavenly divine pavilion, and now, he was using it again. We haven't met for half a year, and I have to admit that your power has improved a lot. You've actually forced me to use it again. Gu Taishu was deeply humiliated. He had thought that if he got serious this time, it would be easy for him to kill Suyu. However, the fact was that Suyu had forced him to use his life-saving treasure from the very beginning. The heaven-extinguishing divine palm was a remnant of a fairy-level cultivation technique, and its might wasn't any weaker than the great sun punishment fairy picture. Suyu furrowed his brows slightly. This life-saving treasure again? I want you dead. Gu Taishu let out a low roar from his throat like an infuriated beast. Buddha mantra! Gu Taishu roared angrily as he weaved signs with his hands, and a series of obscure notes shot out of his mouth. The seemingly ordinary notes produced a terrifying vibration as soon as they came out of his mouth. The whole sky was trembling intensely, and the space was like a cracked mirror, as many terrifying spatial fissures appeared. A sound wave cultivation technique? Suyu raised his brows slightly. A legendary level sound wave cultivation technique. Nothing can block it, not even the heaven-extinguishing divine palm. Gu Taishu's eyes were filled with killing intent. Energy in the form of sound waves was different from ordinary techniques, and it was difficult to deal with it. The only way was to defend. However, how could a half-fairy withstand the sound wave cultivation technique released by a 9th-grade fairy? Chapter 7:11. Suyu took a deep breath, causing the surrounding air to revolve. The spiritual energy of the universe became violent and gathered in Suyu's direction. In the twinkling of an eye, the area within 10,000 feet of Suyu became a vacuum zone. The air around Suyu gradually turned dark. Upon closer inspection, one would see that it was an endless stream of air swirling around Suyu's body. As the air was being compressed, it became pitch black. From afar, a black ribbon danced around Suyu like a butterfly. Provenance Saints 8 characters, swordsman. With a low shout, the black ribbons suddenly exploded, producing countless strands of black mist that radiated in all directions. Everywhere it passed, space shattered into pieces and transformed into an expanse of pitch black. Gu Taishu's sound wave attack was completely extinguished in the shattered space. Mid-grade sound wave legendary art? Gu Taishu was shocked and bewildered. He couldn't understand how the young man in front of him could have such a terrifying level of comprehension. He could even cultivate a legendary level cultivation technique to the consummate level of the first layer. Among the many cultivation techniques, the soundwave cultivation technique was undoubtedly the most difficult one to cultivate. However, Suyu had managed to cultivate it to such an extent. Amidst his bewilderment, the black air current tore through space and pressed down on him. Gu Taishu's expression changed slightly, and his figure retreated frantically until he was 10,000 feet away. The people in the dragon abyss were dumbfounded, and they were shocked speechless. He was a dignified level 9 fairy, yet Suyu still managed to gain the upper hand. It seemed like the so-called Great Saint Master couldn't do anything to Suyu. In fact, he might even be killed by Suyu today. Gu Taishu, show me your true abilities. Suyu clapped his hands lightly, dispersing the remnant airflow around him. I don't believe that an almighty divine master is only capable of this much. He was the number 1 genius of the 18 blessed and heavenly land. The Purple Cloud Palace had done its best to nurture him. How could he only be at this level? Gu Taishu's performance was too mediocre, regardless of whether it was his cultivation techniques, his weapons, or his own cultivation. He didn't seem like a late-stage almighty at all. Suyu even wondered if he was really Gu Taishu. Swish, swish. Suddenly, the sound of the air being torn could be heard as 31 figures with powerful auras swept over. "You're back." Suyu's gaze turned grave. In front of him was Gu Taishu, and behind him were 31 later stage fairies. Even Suyu would find it difficult to deal with such a lineup. "Let's attack together. Don't give him a chance to use the heaven-extinguishing divine palm," the second Saint Master shouted loudly. He took the lead and attacked with his strongest attack. The rest of the people also followed suit. It seemed like they wanted to kill Suyu on the spot. Dozens of colorful rays of light covered the sky and covered the earth as they charged toward Suyu. Suyu retreated and avoided the attack. He naturally would not face it head-on. However, just as he retreated, a few spatial rifts silently approached him from below. He hastily sensed that there was an extremely threatening sound wave hidden in the space. Buddha mantra! A sneak attack? Suyu's eyes were filled with disdain as he looked at Gu Taishu, who had somehow circled below them. He was a mighty divine master, yet he had actually launched a sneak attack. It was truly unimaginable. Based on Suyu's interactions with him, Gu Taishu was extremely arrogant and looked down on everyone. It was really hard to imagine that he would choose to launch a sneak attack. "Are you really Gu Taishu?" Suyu shook his head, disappointment apparent in his eyes. Since the beginning of the fight, Suyu had already clearly sensed Gu Taishu's abnormality. If he wasn't mistaken, this wasn't the real Gu Taishu. "I never said that I was Gu Taishu," Gu Taishu sneered. Suyu's starry wood shone with a cold light. "I don't care if you are a cat or a dog. Since you have appeared here today, don't even think about leaving alive." As the sound wave approached him, the 31 later stage fairies surrounded Suyu from all sides. Suyu didn't panic. Instead, he became even calmer. With a clanging sound, a blue spiritual ruler appeared around Suyu. It was the six-directional ruler, which had a certain level of prediction ability and could defend against the enemy's attack in advance. At the same time, Suyu condensed moonlight in his left palm and gathered the energy of the world in his right hand. He then used both the Buddhist saint's 8 characters and the heaven-extinguishing divine palm at the same time. This scene caused Gu Taishu and the second Saint Master's faces to sink. "Stop him! Don't let him use it!" Gu Taishu shouted as he quickly charged toward him. The second Saint Master also sensed the silver-haired youth's danger. He clenched his teeth, gave up on attacking from afar, and charged toward him. When 2 level 9 fairies attacked each other, how terrifying would their power be? "I want to see whether you will die first, or if you will use your cultivation technique first." Seeing that the 2 of them were about to attack him, Suyu laughed. "Of course you will die first." As he spoke, lightning flickered around Suyu's body, and he used the thunder escape technique to escape. When he reappeared, he was already standing 1,000 feet away from them. At this moment, his left hand was shining with a dazzling moonlight, while his whole body was fluttering with black silk. Suyu, who was illuminated by the black and white light, seemed exceptionally evil. "Destroy!" Suyu's left palm flew toward Gu Taishu, while his right palm flew toward the 31 people. 2 terrifying waves of energy swept toward the 2 groups of people at the same time. A deafening roar reverberated throughout the universe, and the earth-shattering sound shook everyone's eyes. When it dissipated, Gu Taishu was forced back 1,000 feet, while the corners of his mouth were filled with blood. As for the 31 later stage fairies, apart from the second Saint Master, who was barely unscathed, the rest were all injured by the sound wave. Their eardrums were bleeding, and their internal organs were shattered. There were even 2 fairies who were the first to bear the brunt of the sound wave, and their bodies were directly shattered. When the people in the Dragon Abyss witnessed this scene, they couldn't help but gasp in excitement. He had fought 32 people alone, and all of them were later stage fairies. His monstrous martial prowess frightened them to the core. They had heard of the title of Zhenlong's #1 expert, but they had never imagined that he would be so powerful. They were afraid that even if all the people in the continent joined hands, they still wouldn't be a match for Su Yu. However, Elder Jiu's gaze became even more solemn. Wu Aoyue, who was standing beside him and supporting Xiener, was also biting her lips. Her eyes were filled with worry. Elder Jiu, do you have a way to save him? It seems like the young master has the upper hand, but he is still barely holding on. If he still had 3 vital energy crystals, he would be able to easily crush them. However, the owner of one of the vital energy crystals has shattered, and his vital energy won't be able to support him for a long time. If this goes on, he will surely die. Wu Aoyue revealed Su Yu's current situation. The cultivation gap between him and his enemies was too great, so he had no choice but to continuously use high-grade cultivation technique. However, these cultivation techniques required a large amount of vital energy to be used. Although Su Yu seemed calm on the surface, he was already at the end of his rope, and he was just barely holding on. Elder Jiu's gaze was filled with worry and helplessness. The level of their battle isn't something that we can interfere with. If we participate in the battle, we will only be a burden to him. However, I still can't understand why he didn't follow us into the Dragon Abyss, since he has so many heavenly orchid silver bamboos golden leaves, and even a divine master can't easily break them. So, why did he choose to fight when he knew that he would surely die? Elder Jiu voiced out his doubts. Since Su Yu had already prepared such an impregnable refuge, why did he choose to die like a moth flying into a flame? Elder Jiu believed that Su Yu wasn't someone who would risk his life for his dignity. Moreover, he had just gotten married to Xiener, so how could he bear to leave Xiener alone and die alone? Wu Aoyue's body trembled slightly. She discovered that she also couldn't understand Su Yu's actions. However, she could faintly feel that Su Yu was courting his own death. Suddenly, Xiener, who was unconscious in her embrace, furrowed her brows as she woke up from the pain in her neck. "Brother Su Yu!" Xiener cried out in alarm when she woke up. She looked around for Su Yu subconsciously. Wu Aoyue calmed her down and said softly, "The young master is still safe, and he is fighting with the enemy. Miss Qin, please don't be impatient." Xiener hurriedly followed everyone's gaze and looked outside from the Dragon Abyss. Su Yu's figure, which was in the sky, could be seen clearly. His eyes were filled with decisiveness and coldness, just like when he was facing his enemies in the past. However, Xiener could clearly see that Su Yu's face was slightly pale. "Brother Su Yu won't be able to hold on for much longer. I must go and save him." Xiener's heart was in her throat, and she struggled to leave Wu Aoyue's embrace. However, Wu Aoyue grabbed her even more tightly. "Miss Qin, don't be impulsive. Your cultivation is too low, and if you rush out, you will only be a burden to the young master." Xiener only had Su Yu in her eyes, so she wouldn't listen to Wu Aoyue's words. "Let me go. I've already lost brother Su Yu once, and I almost lost him completely. This time, I can't leave his side again, even if I have to die with him." However, Wu Aoyue didn't let go of her. Instead, she grabbed her even more tightly, and her voice, which had always been cold, was filled with anger. "Shut up!" Xiener was startled by her rebuke. In her memory, she was Su Yu's maid, and she had always been respectful to her. She had never imagined that she would dare to rebuke her like this. When she raised her head and looked at her, she saw a pair of slightly red eyes, which were filled with tears. Xiener couldn't understand the anger in her eyes, which had been suppressed for a long time. "The young master risked his life for you time and time again, and he almost lost his life several times. Isn't that enough? Have you never thought about why he did all of this?" Wu Aoyue was like a river that had burst its banks, and she released all of her suppressed emotions. Her hysterical shout caused Xiener to calm down. The survivors of the Dragon Abyss also calmed down. In the Xinyue Islands' Fenghuang Valley, he fought against the Holy King for you. In the Lucian faction's wedding, he fought against Elder Hualong for you. In the Phoenix Cabinet, he fought against Shinkong for you. All of this happened because of you. Because you were too weak and useless, the young master could only run about for you time and time again. He was worried about you, and he risked his life for you. From the beginning to the end, what have you done for him? All you have done for him is endless trouble. Now you still want to rush out so that he will be distracted to protect you, who is weak and useless. Then, he will be killed by the enemy. Will you be satisfied with that? Wu Aoyue touched her chest, and she almost shouted out loud. She was clearly shouting at Xiener, but everyone could tell that she was also shouting at herself. She was blaming herself. She was equally incompetent. Xiener was completely startled, and after a long while, she lowered her head and became silent. Indeed, she had been causing trouble for Su Yu along the way, and she had made him risk his life time and time again to save her. As for her, she had only collected insignificant cultivation resources. Now, she had even rushed out and caused Su Yu's death. All of this was because she was useless and cowardly. She had fallen into a predicament, and she had caused Su Yu to risk his life. She clenched her fists tightly, and her small shoulders trembled slightly. Chapter 7:12. In the outside world, Gu Taishu had been struck by the moon palm twice, and was finally slightly injured. However, when he noticed Su Yu's pale face, he smiled coldly and said, "Ha ha ha, I see. Your vital energy isn't even comparable to a 2 crystals half-fairy. You must be struggling to fight for so long." His words shocked the second Saint Master and the others. After they observed Su Yu carefully, they felt much more at ease. Although this lad was strong, the gap between their cultivation levels was difficult to make up for. "Let's attack together. He won't be able to hold on for long." Gu Taishu's lips curled into a mocking smile. "I want to see how many times you can use such a high-level cultivation technique." Gu Taishu and the second Saint Master exchanged a look, then suddenly attacked. Both sides joined forces to attack Su Yu once again. They were prepared to exhaust Su Yu to death. Su Yu sighed helplessly in his heart. If Gu Taishu was alone, Su Yu was confident that he could wipe him off the face of the earth before his vital energy was exhausted. However, the second Saint Master and the others' battle prowess were stronger than Gu Taishu's. Seeing the two sides charging towards him, Su Yu slowly closed his eyes. When he opened them again, he had regained his ice-cold expression. "Fine, I'll kill as many as I can." Su Yu's eyes shone with an ice-cold light as he laughed and looked around. "Come and accept your death." His shout caused Gu Taishu, the second Saint Master, and the others, who were charging towards him, to slow down. They were all shocked. "Humph! A cornered beast is still struggling. Let's attack together and destroy his body and soul." Gu Taishu suppressed the uneasiness in his heart as he roared and charged forward once again. However, just as the two sides were about to launch a pincer attack to kill Su Yu, a graceful figure descended on a white cloud and landed between Su Yu, the second Saint Master, and the others. She had a graceful figure and a beautiful face. As she stepped on the white cloud, she looked like a fairy. At that moment, the whole world seemed to have lost its color. Only this fairy's beauty existed in this world. A group of people fighting against one person is too unfair. Why don't I join in? Her clear voice was like the rumbling of a mountain spring. Su Yu turned around and looked at the familiar back view, the familiar aura, and the unfamiliar feeling that he felt was strange. Jing Yu. Su Yu looked blankly at the beautiful figure before him, and an indescribable emotion welled up in his heart. Before the wedding, Xia Jingyu had severed all ties with him, and she had sworn that she would make Su Yu regret his actions. But now, she had come back to help him when he was in danger. Big Sister Jingyu. In the Dragon Abyss, Qin Xiener's face revealed a hint of joy. "Since she's here, I can't fall behind." After he finished speaking, he didn't hesitate any longer and took out a jade bottle from the small pocket on his waist. He poured out the medicinal pill within and drank it in one gulp. Then, he sat cross-legged on the ground. A moment later, his aura changed at a speed visible to the naked eye. Wu Aoyue was shocked. Breakthrough? What kind of medicinal pill was this? He can break through directly without even going through heavenly tribulations? Elder Jiu squinted his eyes and said, "The flying immortal pill is a long-lost ancient pill. This little girl actually had such an elixir on her? What a surprise!" For some unknown reason, Wu Aoyue subconsciously looked at Su Yu, and a bitter smile appeared at the corners of her mouth. "You have even prepared this for Qin Xiener. Young master, have you really resolved yourself to die?" A suffocating feeling welled up in her chest. As Wu Aoyue looked at Su Yu's back, she felt a suffocating feeling in her heart. It was as if something was about to happen to Su Yu. In the outside world, the sudden appearance of a beautiful woman caused the second Saint Master and the others to become absent-minded. With a face as beautiful as a fairy, was she really a human woman? It wouldn't be an exaggeration to call her a goddess. "Are you courting death?" Gu Taishu asked coldly. Xia Jingyu didn't look at him at all. Her gaze was fixed on the second Saint Master and the others. "Since you all want to exterminate the Zhenlong continent, dying now or later is just a matter of time. So, what's the difference?" After she spoke, she looked at Su Yu, her beautiful face expressionless. "You can just focus on dealing with Gu Taishu. Leave them to me." Su Yu was startled. "You? Jingyu, you can go to the Dragon Abyss now. I will protect you there, so don't die in vain." Unexpectedly, Xia Jingyu revealed a faint smile. Her smile was mysterious, and Su Yu couldn't understand it. "Is that so?" As she spoke, she walked toward the second Saint Master and the others. "Humph! You don't know what you're talking about. Kill her first." The second Saint Master snorted softly as he thrust his palm toward Xia Jingyu. The powerful vital energy emitted from his palm was enough to turn a 3 crystals half-fairy into nothingness. However, the strange thing was that when the second Saint Master struck out with his palm, Xia Jingyu moved 9 steps to the left. The vital energy in the second Saint Master's palm brushed past Xia Jingyu's slender arm. It didn't cause her any harm at all. This scene didn't seem like much to an outsider, but the second Saint Master felt as if Xia Jingyu had predicted the direction and range of his attack in advance and had easily dodged it. The second Saint Master's face was filled with bewilderment as he shouted in a low voice, "This woman is a little strange. Let's attack her together." Hearing this, the 31 people attacked simultaneously. Multicolored rays of light interweaved to form a giant net, trapping Xia Jingyu within it. If Xia Jingyu came into contact with any of the vital energy, she would be killed on the spot. However, what made the second Saint Master's expression change drastically was that Xia Jingyu moved her feet while they were still condensing their vital energy. She first moved 3 steps to the right, then backward, then to the left, then to the right, and then backward again. Soon after, an unbelievable scene unfolded before their eyes. The places that she had dodged were all the places where the vital energy had attacked. In other words, the moment they attacked, before they even released their true qi, she already knew where their true qi was going to strike. You can sense them in advance." The second Saint Master's voice trembled slightly. Xia Jingyu revealed a mysterious smile. "Sense them? That's not it." As she spoke, she took out a small green and white sword from her sleeves and threw it at them. She then said calmly, "One of you will die from this sword." The group of later stage fairies looked at each other in dismay. The small white sword was just an ordinary middle-grade divine artifact. There wasn't any poison on the sword's hilt, nor was it imbued with some mysterious power. It was just an ordinary small sword. Moreover, the way the woman threw the sword was also ordinary, as it didn't possess any power. This sword couldn't even kill a holy king, so how could it kill the fairies? "Everyone, get out of the way!" Out of caution, the second Saint Master ordered everyone to get out of the way. The thought of intercepting the sword flashed past his mind, but he didn't attack. The small white sword passed through the crowd and fell from the sky after losing its power. Along the way, it was filled with spatial fissures caused by the collision between Su Yu and Gu Taishu. Inadvertently, the sword was swallowed by one of the remaining spatial fissures. The spatial fissures were filled with spatial turbulence, so if the sword fell into them, it would be crushed to pieces. From the beginning to the end, the small sword didn't cause any casualties. The second Saint Master was suspicious. Could this woman be playing tricks on him? Have you caused enough trouble? No matter what tricks you used, in the face of absolute power, everything is futile. Go kill her. The second Saint Master calmed down and waved his hand. The later stage fairies who had split up gathered once again and attacked Xiaojingyu. However, just as they were about to move, a horrible shriek came from their group. The second Saint Master's heart thumped, and he quickly turned around to look. What he saw caused his pupils to contract. He saw that the chest of a later stage fairy, who was the last to be killed, had been cut in half. His entire chest had almost been cut off. With their sharp senses, they could clearly see that a black spatial fissure had appeared behind the fairy who had been killed. Within the fissure, only the tip of a sword was left. It was stained with blood as it disappeared into the black turbulence. This scene shocked everyone. There was actually a later stage fairy who had been killed by a small sword, which couldn't be any more ordinary. The second Saint Master and the others felt their scalps go numb as they turned around to look at the beautiful woman in front of them. The second Saint Master's heart thumped wildly. This wasn't some kind of reaction. She was actually seeing the future in advance. The reaction had only happened in an instant, but the woman had said something that no one would believe, yet it had actually happened. It was as if she had seen the future. No matter how unbelievable it was, it would definitely happen. Seeing the future? Xiaojingyu smiled calmly. You can say that. However, I prefer to call it the trajectory. The trajectory? Suyu was shocked. The trajectory was the divine decree's inheritance left behind by Tianjizi. In the end, Xiaojingyu had obtained it. She had already comprehended Tianjizi's divine decree. The trajectory was the cause and effect of the world. It would follow the flow of time and leave behind a trail of time. If one could see a person or an object's trail of time in advance, one would be able to know what would happen to them at any time. Xiaojingyu had said that the sword would kill a person because she had seen the sword's trail. She knew that it would kill a later stage fairy at some point in time. In the end, the sword had indeed followed the trail and killed a fairy. In the eyes of others, this was foreseeing the future. However, only Xiaojingyu knew that she had seen the trail. She knew when a person would grow old, fall sick, and die. Such a terrifying divine decree shocked the second Saint Master and the others, causing them to hesitate. Do you want to know your trail? Xiaojingyu smiled calmly as she looked at all of them. Her gaze caused their bodies to tremble. It was as if she had seen through their fates. All of you will die today. None of you will survive. Xiaojingyu smiled. Although her smile was beautiful, it gave them an ice-cold feeling. The second Saint Master's heart thumped wildly, and his face turned pale. They will all die here? How is this possible? After taking a deep breath, the second Saint Master forced himself to calm down. He then shouted in a low voice, "Don't listen to this demonic woman's lies. Let's kill her first." Everyone was terrified, so they followed the second Saint Master and charged forward to surround Xiaojingyu. Xiaojingyu was not afraid at all. She was like a fluttering butterfly in the midst of the crowd, casually wandering among the crowd. Although this woman is really strange, she doesn't have any cultivation. There is no need to worry. The second Saint Master shouted in a low voice. He was overjoyed when he realized that something was amiss. The crowd also quickly realized that something was amiss, which made them feel much more relaxed. Xiaojingyu's perception was extraordinary, but she had never cultivated any powerful cultivation technique. Hence, her fighting prowess was not as strong as Su Yu's. Therefore, although she could deal with them easily, she did not have much destructive power. Chapter 7:13. The second Saint Master snorted coldly. You are just bluffing. You guys deal with this woman. I will help the great Saint Master kill Su Yu. This woman was strange, and they could not kill her in a short time. However, she could not inflict much damage either. Hence, he immediately flew towards Su Yu and joined forces with Gu Taishu to kill Su Yu. Su Yu was suddenly under great pressure, as he was fighting two people at the same time. In a short time, Su Yu could rely on his powerful cultivation technique to gain the upper hand, but as time went on, he would eventually reveal some flaws. Just as the ruler blocked Gu Taishu's attack, Su Yu opened his right arm, revealing a weak spot under his armpit, which was close to his heart. Die! The second Saint Master roared as he found a fatal flaw in Su Yu's body. He clawed at Su Yu's heart, intending to shatter it. The ruler could not react in time, and Gu Taishu was in front of him, so Su Yu could not avoid it. He was alarmed, but he had been fighting Su Sha for a long time, so he reacted quickly. Almost at the same time, the Eternal Stone King armor appeared on Su Yu's body. The moment the armor appeared, a claw fiercely struck the area near his ribs. Although the armor had dissipated most of the attack, a small part of it had still penetrated the armor and affected Su Yu's body. Su Yu was sent flying by the powerful attack. He groaned as a trickle of blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. He is still alive. The second Saint Master's face darkened as he looked at the armor on Su Yu's body. Even a level 9 fairy would have been killed by such a strike, and Su Yu's damaged high-grade spiritual armor was really shocking. Humph! I will take advantage of your weakness to kill you. The second Saint Master's attack had failed, so he followed up with another attack. Su Yu was already exhausted, and his face was even paler than before. However, the flames in his eyes did not diminish. That will depend on your survival. However, just as the two of them were about to collide, a strange movement came from the dragon abyss. The densely sealed heavenly orchid silver bamboo's golden leaves were slowly dispersing. Su Yu's expression changed. Who opened the seal? Apart from Su Yu, no one else could open the seal. Only the people inside could open it at will. This was a dangerous battle, so who would dare to come out? Su Yu was furious. As he was blaming himself, he suddenly felt a chill run down his spine as he stared at the mouth of the dragon abyss. It was as if there was an extremely terrifying monster in the dragon abyss staring at him. The second Saint Master and Gu Taishu, who were about to make a move, also had a grave expression on their faces. Such a strong baleful qi. Also, what's with that death qi? Why is there such a dense death qi in the dragon abyss? The second Saint Master could not help but shiver. Gu Taishu squinted his eyes, and his pupils contracted gradually. Then, he looked at Su Yu and shouted in a deep voice, "What the hell are you doing now? Even fairies don't have such a large amount of deathly energy." In his opinion, Su Yu must have arranged some kind of terrifying backup plan. After exchanging a few blows, Gu Taishu had a profound understanding of Su Yu's endless backup plans. Su Yu did not pay any attention to them. Instead, he used his soul eyes to penetrate the darkness and look into the depths of the dragon abyss. However, the moment his gaze entered, Su Yu's eyes met with a pair of dark red blood-colored eyes. It was ice-cold, emotionless, and indifferent. It was filled with a majesty that disregarded the common people. Most importantly, his blood-red eyes were filled with a terrifying aura of death. With just a single look, Su Yu felt an acute pain in his soul. A wisp of deathly energy followed Su Yu's soul, entered his entire soul, and struck the divine nine-dragon cauldron. The divine nine-dragon cauldron was actually shaken. This was the second time that the divine nine-dragon cauldron had almost shifted its position. Previously, it was the Blood Emperor who had attacked. This time, it was the mysterious Blood Eye. Su Yu's face turned pale, and he was greatly shocked. Whose eyes are those? If not for the divine nine-dragon cauldron, those eyes could have taken Su Yu's life. Su Yu immediately averted his gaze, his heart turning grave. When did such a terrifying, ferocious creature appear in the sealed dragon abyss? Were Xian and the others threatened? Suddenly, Su Yu's expression changed once again, and he quickly retreated. Oh no, something is coming out. Retreat quickly. Gu Taishu's senses were sharp. His expression changed drastically, and he retreated hastily. Everyone, retreat immediately. The second Saint Master's expression changed, and he immediately ordered his people to retreat quickly. From the dragon abyss, they all felt an extremely unsettling aura of death. Moreover, the aura of death was rapidly approaching, flying out from the dragon abyss. Everyone stopped fighting and fixed their gazes on the dragon abyss. The aura of death was becoming more and more intense, and wisps of black fog were rising from the dragon abyss. The black fog was formed by the aura of death. What is the aura of death that has turned into fog? Gu Taishu's eyes were filled with shock. A feeling of death engulfed everyone's hearts at the same time. Shortly after, a large mass of ink-black fog gushed out from the dragon abyss. It was as big as a small mountain, and it was so dense that it was impossible to see what was going on inside. However, this black fog, which was as big as a small mountain, was emitting an extremely ferocious aura. It was as if a ferocious creature from ancient times had been reborn from death. Everyone's hearts were in their throats, and they were all vigilantly watching the black fog mountain. All of a sudden, the black fog wriggled and shrank, slowly revealing the true appearance of the ferocious creature within it. Finally, the black fog shrunk to the size of a human. All of the black fog shrunk and entered the human's body. When all of the black fog had entered the human's body, the human's appearance was clearly revealed. Su Yu was shocked. The last person that was revealed was unexpectedly Qin Xian. Was that ferocious aura really emitted by her? Su Yu fixed his eyes on her, and when he used his soul eyes, he could see that Xian Er's body was filled with an endless amount of fog. It was the aura of death. There was also a power within her bloodline that caused Su Yu's heart to palpitate. A human's bloodline power. What kind of terrifying constitution is this? The second Saint Master was shocked speechless. It was obvious that he had never expected that the so-called peerless ferocious creature was actually a weak little girl. Gu Taishu's face turned pale, and his eyes were filled with disbelief. It's impossible. Why would such a constitution appear in such a desolate land? It's the Death Phoenix Constitution. It's the constitution of the 9 underworlds Phoenix's bloodline. Swoosh. The second Saint Master's face turned deathly pale, and he spoke in a trembling voice. The Death Phoenix Constitution? A nature-defying ancient spiritual body that has inherited the 9 underworlds Phoenix's bloodline? It's rumored that people with such a constitution can communicate with yin and yang through their eyes, and they have the death body that can take any living creature's life. Wu Aoyue, who was in the dragon abyss, was also deeply shocked. The Death Phoenix Constitution is also known as the Death God Constitution. It's rumored that it's one of the most terrifying and mysterious ancient spiritual bodies in the ancient times. It has the 9 underworlds Phoenix's bloodline, and it's also known as the Death God Constitution among the human race. It can take away life and bestow death upon anyone. It's almost like a god of death. She then added, Qin Xian unexpectedly has such a rare nature-defying spiritual body. There has never been such a case in the history of Jiuzhou. The only case was that a woman with the Death Phoenix Constitution was intercepted by a group of all-creation old monsters when she was passing through Jiuzhou. In the end, those all-creation old monsters never came back. The Death Phoenix Constitution was a nature-defying divine constitution that even Yun Yazi had wanted to take as his disciple. Even Xia Jingyu's goddess constitution might not be able to rival it. Well, why did I come out? Qin Xian opened her eyes, which were filled with a deathly aura. When she opened her eyes in a daze, she was startled by the changes in her surroundings. When she saw Su Yu out of the corner of her eye, she was pleasantly surprised. She flew into Su Yu's embrace and complained, "Brother Su Yu, I made a breakthrough." "Oh right. You are really bad. You left Xian behind again." Breakthrough? Not only did she make a breakthrough, but she even awakened her bloodline power. As he hugged Qin Xian Su Yu felt like he was on the brink of death. It was as if Xian could take his life with a single thought. "I'm sorry, Xian Su Yu was speechless. He knew that Xian must have swallowed the fairy pill in order to make a breakthrough in order to save him. Su Yu could clearly feel her kind intentions. Xian nose turned sour, and she leaned her head on Su Yu's shoulder. "I don't want you to take risks for me. If you die, I will be too lonely. I only have you and my father left." Su Yu nodded and patted Xian's back lightly. Suddenly, Xian came back to her senses. She quickly left Su Yu's embrace and examined him. "Brother Su Yu, how are you?" When she raised her head, Su Yu's pale face and the blood flowing from the corners of his mouth entered Qin Xian's eyes. "You are injured." Qin Xian clenched her fists. She blamed herself and was also angry. She extended her small hand and wiped the blood from the corners of Su Yu's mouth. Her gem-like eyes were filled with coldness. "Brother Su Yu, you should rest. This time, it's my turn to protect you." As she spoke, she suddenly turned her head around. She had an extremely pretty and cute face, but in the eyes of the second Saint Master and the others, it was as if they were being stared at by a peerless monster. As she swept her gaze over them, Xian's eyes reflected each and every one of them. Traces of death aura slowly flowed out from his eyes. An obscure and terrifying energy surrounded Xian's body. "Die." Xian opened her mouth and spat out an ice-cold word. Apart from that, Xian didn't make any other movements. However, this scene caused the whole world to fall into a deathly silence. The bodies of the 30 later stage fairies, who had surrounded Xia Jingyu, suddenly turned into ashes, as if they were made of paper in a raging inferno. It didn't matter whether they were Grade 8 Fairy Realm experts or Grade 7 Fairy Realm experts. They didn't feel any pain, nor did they feel any fear. In fact, they even had the same expressions as when they were alive. Just like that, they silently turned into ashes. The 30 Fairy Realm experts had been killed in an instant, their lives stolen. This was all because the little girl in Su Yu's embrace had uttered the word "die." The whole world fell into a deathly silence. It didn't matter whether it was the Dragon Abyss, Gu Taishu, the second Saint Master, or Su Yu himself. Even though Yun Yazi had emphasized that the Death Phoenix Constitution was an extraordinary constitution, Su Yu had never thought that such a constitution would be so terrifying. She could decide the fate of all living beings with a single glance and a single word, just like a god of death. This was the Death Phoenix Constitution. The shock in his heart was indescribable. This is the Death Phoenix Constitution. The second Saint Master's voice was hoarse, and his whole body couldn't help but shiver. If Xia Jingyu's ability to foresee the future made him feel uneasy, then Qin Xian's Death Phoenix Constitution made him feel a deep dread. Swoosh! The second Saint Master calmed himself down and slowly retreated. He then turned around and soared into the sky to escape. He didn't even have the will to fight anymore. In his eyes, this wasn't a battle anymore, but a god of death taking lives. However, in the eyes of the people in the Dragon Abyss, it was just the slaughterer becoming the slaughterer. Xian'er coldly looked at him, and his image was reflected in her eyes. She then coldly said, "Die." As her voice drifted through the air, Su Yu could feel a mysterious and terrifying power seeping into the Zhenlong world. Shortly after, the second Saint Master's body, which was still fleeing, started turning into ashes. As he fled, his body gradually disappeared. In the end, only his head was left, which flew into the sky before falling down to the ground. Even a level 9 fairy couldn't escape death. As they looked at the cute and harmless Qin Xianer, all of them felt a chill run down their spines. Was she really a human? She was clearly a god of death, who controlled all living beings' lives. In the dragon abyss, shock appeared in Zhi Yuanzhou's eyes. The Death Phoenix constitution is one of the most terrifying ancient spirit bodies. Who would have expected that Su Yu would have such a divine body hidden by his side, and that she would attack at the last moment and kill all of the enemy's later stage fairies? Such a terrifying scene would be unforgettable to all of them. While they were still in shock, a slight sound echoed from Zhou Yuanzhou's side. Phoenix Master Qiu? Zhou Yuanzhou was slightly surprised. She had been unconscious for half a year, so how could she suddenly wake up? Wu Aoyue immediately went forward and supported Phoenix Master Qiu, who was slowly opening her eyes. Phoenix Master Qiu, you have finally woken up. You were unconscious for such a long time. Phoenix Master Qiu was at a loss at first, and her gaze was sluggish. Then, she gradually came to her senses and looked around her. After a moment of silence, Phoenix Master Qiu seemed to recall something, and her expression abruptly changed to one of fear. I woke up a long time ago. I woke up half a year ago. Someone did something to my medicine, causing me to fall asleep every time I was about to wake up. Elder Jiu's expression changed when he heard this. How is this possible? You were in the Heavenly Law Alliance's heart-nurturing palace, where fairies were all around. Who could bypass them and do something to your medicine? As Phoenix Master Qiu's thoughts became clearer, the fright on her face became more obvious. No, she didn't need to bypass the fairies, because she was the one taking care of me. Her words caused Elder Jiu and Wu Aoyue's expressions to stiffen. Su Yu had been in secluded cultivation for half a year, and he had spent most of his time taking care of Phoenix Master Qiu alone. That person was Xia Jingyu. You were all deceived by her. Quickly inform Alliance Master Su that there is something fishy about this woman. Phoenix Master Qiu struggled to get off the bed. Wu Aoyue sensed that this matter was grave, so she asked gravely, Phoenix Master Qiu, what happened to her? Phoenix Master Qiu replied quickly, quickly inform Alliance Master Su that I was injured by this woman. What? She was the one who injured you? The Heavenly Law Alliance's people were all startled. On that day, Phoenix Master Qiu had taken the unconscious Xia Jingyu and escaped from the warship to meet up with Su Yu. However, when Su Yu arrived, Phoenix Master Qiu was still unconscious, and she had only woken up today. She was unexpectedly injured by Xia Jingyu, who was also unconscious. How is this possible? Let alone the fact that Miss Xia was unconscious, even if she wasn't, why would she injure you? Old Shen rushed over and asked in disbelief. However, Phoenix Master Qiu's next words caused everyone to stiffen. Chapter 714 2015 Eliminating Pornography and Illegal Publications. It wasn't difficult to discern the Phoenix Master Qiu's anger, fear, and anxiety from her words. Upon hearing this, everyone's expressions changed. This was especially the case for Elder Jiu, as he, Xia Jingyu, and the Phoenix Master Qiu were all being treated in the Yangxin Palace. How could he accept that the unconscious Xia Jingyu was the culprit behind all of this? Zi Yunxiang also shook her head in shock. She couldn't believe that Xia Jingyu's identity was fake. What was even more shocking was that Xia Jingyu had continuously attacked the Phoenix Master Qiu in front of Elder Jiu. Every time she woke up, she would immediately fall into a deep sleep. Since the Phoenix Master Qiu knew that Su Yu was the Alliance Master, it was obvious that she was awake at some point while she was unconscious. Hence, she must have understood the situation in the outside world. What I said is absolutely true. Quickly inform the Alliance Master Su, the Phoenix Master Qiu urged anxiously as she surveyed the surroundings. It was only now that she discovered that their surroundings were strange. Where are we? Where is the Heavenly Law Alliance's warship? She didn't know that the Heavenly Law Alliance's warship had been destroyed a long time ago. Phoenix Master Chiu, please explain clearly that the Alliance Master Su's current situation is quite special, and we mustn't disturb him. Everyone's hearts sank. Now, Su Yu and Xia Jingyu were fighting side by side. If the Phoenix Master Chiu's words were false, the two of them would turn against each other, and they wouldn't be able to face Gu Taishu together. Hence, even though the current situation was quite urgent, they still had to verify the fact. They couldn't just say a few words. The Phoenix Master Chiu wasn't aware of the situation in the outside world, so after she calmed down, she began to clearly recall what had happened that day. That day, I received Su Yu's request to take Xia Jingyu and Elder Jiu away from the warship ahead of time. Su Yu said that a great change might occur in the warship, so he didn't want them to be threatened by Fu Songshan, the Phoenix Master Chiu explained. The Phoenix Master Chiu explained the reason for that day. I agreed, so I brought them to the designated location and waited for Su Yu's arrival. However, I didn't expect that while we were waiting, Xia Jingyu would wake up. As she spoke, fear appeared in the Phoenix Master Chiu's eyes. But I saw with my own eyes that a powerful soul materialized on top of Xia Jingyu's head. That aura was even more terrifying than a fairy realm's. After that, she entered Xia Jingyu's spirit cap and took control of her body. Then, she attacked me, saying that since I saw through her, she couldn't let me live. In the end, she struck my abdomen with her palm, seriously injuring me and making me unconscious. When the crowd heard this, they all gasped. Even a fairy realm expert wouldn't be able to materialize his soul. Only Elder Jiu's eyes flickered with a strange light. According to what Su Yu had said when he had examined her injuries, his palm strike could have easily taken the Phoenix Master Chiu's life. But he had restrained himself at the last moment, which was why he had managed to injure her, but not kill her. Since they wanted to silence her, why did they leave Phoenix Master Chiu alive? From this point of view, it was truly illogical. Later on, I gradually woke up from my deep slumber, and my consciousness gradually cleared. However, just as I was about to wake up, this woman appeared again and channeled power into my body, causing me to continue to fall into a coma. It was only until recently that she did not appear again that I was able to break free and regain consciousness. After Elder Jiu heard this, he understood what the Phoenix Master Chiu had said. This was because Xia Jingyu had disappeared from the Heavenly Law Alliance after meeting Su Yu alone. During this period of time, the Phoenix Master Chiu hadn't channeled the all-creation power into her body in time, which was why she had gradually regained consciousness. It's really her. Zi Yunxiang bit her red lips, while anxiousness appeared in her eyes. I will go and inform him to be on guard against this sinister woman. However, someone had already taken a step ahead of her and flew into the sky. Let me inform him, Wu Aoyue said coldly, without even turning her head. Her face was filled with anxiety. At this moment, Su Yu's back was facing that detestable woman. In the outside world, Xiener's Death Phoenix constitution had displayed its might, and she had killed all of the late-stage fairies with just a single sentence. This had greatly shocked Su Yu. The harmless little girl was the most frightening existence. Brother Su Yu. After she had killed the second Saint Master, Xiener's cold expression disappeared. When she turned around, she saw that Su Yu was looking at her with a burning gaze. Xiener enjoyed his surprised gaze, which she had never seen before. At the same time, she also felt somewhat embarrassed. She lowered her head and snuggled into Su Yu's embrace. She was both excited and shy. Brother Su Yu, did I help you? She had always been the one to cause trouble for Su Yu, but now she had helped him. Was this really what she was thinking? Su Yu's heart was filled with tenderness, and he stroked her head. Yes, it was because of you that I was saved. Thank you, Xiener. Xiener's heart started thumping crazily when she heard him call her Xiener. It was only at this moment that she realized that she and Su Yu were already husband and wife. Xia Jingyu, who was looking at this scene from afar, was slightly startled. Complex emotions appeared in her eyes. After a long while, she calmed down and regained her calm demeanor. Shouldn't we first deal with the great threat in front of us? Venerable Fu Gui might come back at any moment. Such a timely reminder caused Xiener's face to redden, and she subconsciously left Su Yu's embrace. When Xiener looked at Xia Jingyu, who was standing in the distance, she felt somewhat uncomfortable. For some unknown reason, her close friend, who she had talked about everything with in the Xianyu prefecture, now gave her a strange feeling. Su Yu also looked at her and revealed a faint smile. It seemed like he was relieved from his burden. Xia Jingyu shuddered. She seemed like she had discovered something from his smile. "You're right. Let's deal with the person in front of us first." Su Yu turned around, while his expression was ice-cold. Xia Jingyu also flew over and stood on Su Yu's right. Qin Xiener also stood calmly on Su Yu's left. All of them were coldly looking at Gu Taishu. The three of them had never fought an enemy side by side like they did today. One of them was Su Yu's wife, while the other was his former lover. In the Zhenlong's final moments, they had joined hands to fight the enemy. Was this fate's arrangement? Gu Taishu, who had lost 30 of his subordinates in a single breath, wore an unsightly expression. He was in a favorable situation, and he would be able to kill Su Yu in less than half a cup of tea's time. However, who would have expected that a strange woman, who could foresee the future, would appear, followed by an even more terrifying Death Phoenix constitution, who could kill all of the late-stage fairy realm experts by herself. Even Gu Taishu shuddered in fear when facing such a strange death energy. Good. Very good. Foreseeing the future and the Death Phoenix constitution. Su Yu, you really hid your strength well. You actually managed to get 2 such stunning women by your side. Gu Taishu seemed like he had just recalled the ambiguous relationship between his fiancée, Lu Chui, and Su Yu, which made him even more resentful. But, do you really think that you can kill me like this? Gu Taishu's eyes flashed with pain. He took a deep breath and took out the Emperor Tower again. This time, he didn't activate the Emperor Tower. Instead, he pointed at the ancient sword that had been stuck in the Emperor Tower for countless years. A tower, a sword, and a person. This was Su Yu's first impression of them. Among the three of them, the most terrifying one was undoubtedly the ancient sword that contained the power to destroy everything. Gu Taishu didn't pull out the sword when he was being suppressed by Su Yu. Now, facing the 3 people who could completely destroy them, he was finally going to pull it out. The dragon-slaying fairy sword is a fairy artifact. This sword can kill all almighty divine masters below the all creations level, Xia Jingyu said calmly. She, who could foresee the future, knew everything. A fairy artifact that could kill anyone below the all creations level with a single sword strike? A fairy artifact was a peerless weapon that could only be mastered by all creation's old monsters. Its power was beyond imagination. This sword strike was enough to end all of their lives. Gu Taishu's finger made the ancient sword tremble. Countless cracks appeared on the surface of the scabbard. Then, with a bang, it shattered completely and turned into dust. Surrounded by dust, a blood-red long sword floated quietly in the air. The blood-red color wasn't the original color of the sword. It was blood that hadn't dried up yet. A terrifying aura was emitted from the fresh blood. The entire sword was stained with terrifying blood. Whose blood hadn't dried up after such a long time. The last time I pulled out the sword, I killed a half-step all creations. His blood hasn't dried up yet, Gu Taishu murmured softly as he held the hilt of the sword with one hand. His tone was profound. The blood of a half-step all creations. No wonder it couldn't be destroyed by the passage of time. It was still emitting a shocking aura. Yesterday's chapter will be updated tonight. The Yuewan group will actively cooperate with the relevant departments and submit information.